It is 10:01. Good morning from the Circus Sports at the Mint Kentucky Downs studio. I'm Lucas Panzica. This afternoon, the Titans will officially introduce Robert Saleh as the next head coach, with the press conference beginning at 2 p.m. at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Meanwhile, Saleh's staff starting to take shape, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Paul Kaharski reported on Wednesday that former Giants assistant Carmen Brasillo will be the Titans' offensive line coach. Former Giants QB coach Shea Tierney is set to join in the same capacity in Tennessee. College hoops, Tennessee won on the road in overtime at Georgia 86-85. Jacoby Gillespie 21 points and 6 assists. Nate Ament 19 points and 6 rebounds as the Vols move to 4-3 in SEC play. The Nashville Predators road trip continues today at the New Jersey Devils. Puck drop is at 6 p.m. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Finally, you get to hear from your head coach later this afternoon. Robert Saleh is in Nashville, and his press conference will take place at 2 p.m. today. We will see what the new Titans head coach has to say, but as we talked about yesterday, his life gets a hell of a lot easier at the podium because of all of the questions he does not have to answer about his situation with the offensive coordinator. Brian Daboll's hire makes that a lot easier. We have a handful of different staffers that have been reported on who will join Brian Daboll's offensive coaching staff.
I'm sorry, who?
Brian Daboll. Daboll, like table.
Let's just pretend to be professional around here for 2 seconds.
Why? I mean, it's just like anything else. It's like Robert clipped off that Buck Chuck bit he did yesterday and reminding all of us that we have not read live liners as a part of the radio show, I think, in 6 months. But
no, it hadn't been 6 months.
At least 6 months.
It hadn't been 6 months.
Maybe a calendar year. It's entirely possible that we have not read liners in a calendar year.
No.
We'll be at T-Line February 12th. 2 weeks from today. Come curl with us. Whole station will be there.
Are you two? Well, is the morning show going? Because they're not. It's like they're starting with us, right?
I believe their attendance is uncategorized at this moment, is how I would label it.
Are you two going to curl?
Of course.
Curling every day, dude. Look how big these arms are. Are you kidding me?
Lucas hasn't been to T-Line before. I was kind of surprised. It feels like something that you would, I don't know, that you would drunkenly stumble upon. Although that's way too far west for you. It's not at Red Door East, so we can't get Lucas to go.
You know what I'm excited for? Who owns T-Line?
Mark Bulger.
Former Ravens quarterback. I have to ask him, be like, hey, dude, what was it like to really stink it up?
Robert's like, I got questions.
Are you really going to sit there?
Take a seat here.
Are you really going to sit there and grill Mark Bulger?
No, I'm not going to grill him. I would say maybe a light braising.
You can ask if he'll be on the show. You can talk to him about all your, early 2000s Ravens trivia questions that you want to ask him.
What was
bore the hell out of the audience.
Like? What was Haloti Nada like?
Aren't you at a tailgate with all these people every year?
Some of them, yeah. It's not like they want to talk to me. I don't grill those guys. I'm just like, will you please sign this? Please?
You're not one of these grown-ass men that runs up to players at training camp or sends their children out there to get a signature for them to sell on eBay later after the fact. I hate those people.
Oh, that's a good ploy. I love using kids as like little secret agents, little Trojan horses. Like, hey, go tell your dad we want Taco Bell tonight.
Is that why you're going to have children?
Yeah. Well, I think I would enjoy the process more than the end result.
At least somebody will. People in the F&M Bank chat where you can interact with us, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. You can also call us, 615-737-1045. We can talk about the most important question that Robert Saleh has to answer today. We will also have Stoney Keeley on from the Senior Bowl because that is happening. Half the NFL coaches don't seem to be at the Senior Bowl this year because the timing was poor and also the weather made it difficult for a variety of different people to get down there. Mike Borgonzi is not at Senior Bowl. They do have a scouting contingent at Senior Bowl, the Titans do. But Mike Borgonzi is going to be at the press conference today. So we can talk about the most important question that Saleh has to answer in the world where he already has a good portion of his offensive coaching staff, which is the biggest question about Robert Saleh in general. But the chat is asking us what we think of the new Titans logo that is being propagated as potentially being a part of the uniform change on like Reddit channels and stuff like that. Have either of you seen these things?
I have seen this scuttlebutt.
I've seen two separate ones with the same kind of idea, but I think one is more distinguishable than the other one.
You're not are you like with uniforms the same as logos? You don't care about these things?
I just tend to not have very strong opinions. I'm always like, yeah, it looks good. Looks fine.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Robert,
I like the fireball.
Are you a uniform? You like the flaming thumbtack?
I do. It's like, it's my logo.
Okay. Robert, are you a uniform logo person?
I'm not a snob by any means. I'm not the guy like...
Because there are people that are. And
yes.
I think this is something that fans love. Like, I think fans just love the idea of what, could this be it? Is this the thing? Do we have the leak? Is the logo at Titan's house? That's something somebody tagged me the other day, that there's a logo at Titan's house that's allegedly going to be the new logo that is
Which
not
is
the
just the logo.
thumbtack.
It just doesn't have the flame behind it. It just doesn't have the flame behind it.
And I think the tri-stars are maybe at a little bit of a different angle. I don't know. I mean, yeah, if that's something that you guys want to get all fired up about, sure. But, okay, whatever. You got a coach today.
He talks today.
He
will speak as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans for the first time at 2 p.m.
So what is the biggest question that he has to answer? Because
It's been answered.
Well, no, that's not true.
Yes, it is.
Not.
Who's your offensive coordinator? Check.
No. Why did you fail in New York, and what's going to be different here? Now, that can be a part of the answer, because why did he fail in New York? His offense was terrible. And it's not his offense, right? It's Mike LaFleur's offense. It's Aaron Rodgers' offense. It's Nathaniel Hackett's offense, all these different things. But he did fail in New York because they couldn't get the offense right. And maybe everybody fails with the Jets, and he's sure as hell doing better than Aaron Glenn, who already seems to be underwater with that organization, where their coaching search is just, their coordinator search has turned into a bit of a mess.
I'd be curious to hear about the decision to call plays on defense. What led to making that call something he did not do as the head coach of the Jets?
Yeah, and why would you be comfortable with that this time around? Like, what substantial difference? Because there's, in theory, right, Robert Saleh is hailed for defense and has been a good defensive play caller. Like, there's quantifiable evidence that this person can do that job. But Robert Saleh wasn't calling the defense in New York. It was Jeff Ulbrich.
Who's also very good at that job.
Very good. The Falcons' defense, where Jeff Ulbrich is now the coordinator, and they have talent, of course, and they obviously prioritized that this past year in the draft and in free agency and trading for, what's the former Bengals safety? Bates? Jesse Bates?
Jesse Bates,
Jesse
yes.
Bates, a stud. I'm sure Cincinnati wished they didn't give away. Maybe the owner doesn't care because it was expensive.
Well, he walked. They didn't trade him.
They didn't trade him?
No, he walked.
But they didn't pay him.
It was the whole franchise tag situation.
Oh, the Bengals.
Yes.
There they are. So, theoretically, we are giving Robert Saleh credit for Jeff Ulbrich's abilities as a defensive play caller, despite them being on the same staff. Now, maybe you don't want to separate those two things.
I think Robert Saleh's done enough in his own right as a defensive play caller.
I would agree. I think that he was excellent this year, despite the circumstances. Even though their defense was not excellent statistically or by efficiency or any of these things, we understand why it looked that way in San Francisco the way that they did. They were good enough, right? Good enough to get to the divisional round, where ultimately they met their demise against the Seattle Seahawks. But, yeah, to me, it's about, all right, what lessons did you learn in New York that are going to be applicable here? How different is the situation that you are walking into here versus what you had in your previous stop? And how are those things? What is the next step for you as a coach as you fill out your staff, understanding, because the only thing that they have officially announced besides Saleh is Dable, like table.
Which starting to come together, though.
Yeah, feels pretty good about it. So, with all the different things that you have today, we will obviously have Robert Saleh's press conference later in the afternoon, and we will have Greg Cosell's analysis of Brian Dable because we had a taping of the Install podcast this morning with Cosell breaking down all the different ways that Cam Ward will be used, all the differences between Daboll's previous stops and what he is now working with. And Robert, I asked you a couple of questions like, what would you want to know as a fan getting a new offensive coordinator, basically? And you gave me a couple of good questions that I asked to Cosell, so I appreciate your participation.
Oh, you used it.
I used one.
Oh.
Used one. And I really didn't even use it.
I gave you like 6, dude.
Yeah, I ignored most of them.
Those were all primo.
Primo? What was the most primo among them?
You'll have to find out.
Doesn't even remember the questions he sent me. So, you can hear that analysis. When are we going to do this? Because we're having Zoom. We were supposed to have Stoney Keeley in the next segment.
We'll do it at 11:20. We'll just do Stoney on the phone.
We'll do Stoney on the phone. So we'll
Stoney on the phony.
Do a little.
I got you to actually chuckle.
Who?
You. It's on TV. You can't say anything. You're a liar. I got Stoney on the phone. He got you. And he ain't bony. He's been eating good up there.
Yeah, I mean,
Non-bony Stoney on the phony.
the things he eats.
And he's not full of baloney. He's got great facts.
He seems
He's
like
very ball-no-y.
None of his facts will be erroneous.
This is like that scene from Ted where they're talking about brewskis. And they get mad at Mila Kunis because she just shoehorns ski onto the name of some Boston sports player or something like that. They both get upset. Otherwise, we're just morons shouting nonsense.
Should be the name of the show.
Morons shouting nonsense. Yeah.
MNS, or wait. MSN.
Oh, it would be a good pivot. That's basically what this is. Subtitles, subtext. So, the other coaches that have been reported on, like Lucas said in his update, you get Carmen Brasillo. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yes. Brasillo, former Giants offensive line coach.
Have you guys, and maybe, Pro Football Focus is not the end-all be-all, but Giants had a pretty effective offensive line group last year, the last 2 years, because Brasillo was there with Daboll for 2 years, was with the Raiders for a season before that, was with the Patriots for like 5 in various capacities working with offensive line. They were a top 3 group in terms of pass blocking efficiency last year. And the Giants graded out as the 5th best the 5th best run blocking unit. Now, that also includes like EPA per attempt and things like that, like how many expected points they got for every rushing attempt they had. They were one of the most efficient units in football that way. Robert, you talked about the running backs that they have in New York and what they were able to do with them in the last couple of years, guys like Tyrone Tracy and things like that. But the offensive line they have a stud left tackle, right? They have a better offensive lineman, one single better offensive lineman than anybody in Tennessee, right? Andrew Thomas is excellent when he's been available, and he was very available last year. He played for the Ravens. Is it Jermaine Illuminor?
Correct.
Yep. He's a free agent.
Is somebody who is being potentially rumored as following both Brasillo and Daboll to Tennessee as an offensive line free agent, understanding that Lloyd Cushenberry's future isn't certain. You have a situation for Zeitler where he was on a 1-year deal. I would not be interested in bringing Kevin Zeitler back, right? We're all in agreement. You can get more bang for your buck on $9 million a year than a broken down 37-year-old guard.
I doubt he would cost that much next year because he was coming off a great year with Detroit is why I think that it cost that much. And to make him come here to play with a younger, more put-together offensive line, you had to produce a pretty penny. But I think he would be a little bit cheaper this offseason.
And Illuminor would not be. Now, the thing that they have is money, right? But it just depends on how much you want to spend. Also, I do wonder what that means for somebody like Lloyd Cushenberry, who has, it's ballpark $4 million in savings. If they were to cut him with a $12.5 million cap hit, and I think it's just over $9 million in dead cap that they would incur by cutting Lloyd Cushenberry. But I'm willing, I don't know. I would be willing to take a chance on him rather than reset the board at center. Is that an unpopular opinion? I think people were down on Lloyd Cushenberry coming off the Achilles, but I'm kind of okay with 2 years removed. The idea of still trying to make that work while you got him under contract.
It'll be interesting to see how much of the offensive line they run back, given the momentum they finished the season with, but still some obvious holes. I think the foundation of it is very much there. Lloyd Cushenberry is kind of the foundational piece that you wonder whether or not will be back.
Yeah, Dan Moore under contract. Now, the interesting part on Skoronski is he is contract eligible now that his third season is done. And J.C. Latham will be contract eligible at the conclusion of this upcoming season. So just kind of worth keeping an eye on how those two continue to make progress, because Peter Skoronski was, I don't want to say excellent, but he was really damn good last year. He won't get the recognition for it because he played on a 3-win Titans team. But Peter Skoronski took the kind of jump that you were expecting and maybe did it in a little bit more anonymity because of how bad the Titans were collectively last year. So, Stoney Keeley from the Senior Bowl, next.
Welcome back to the show.
What the hell is that music?
As requested by the great Stoney Keeley, who's down in Mobile for the Senior Bowl as the Titans staff gets assembled. Robert Saleh will speak today. Stoney and Zach Lyons of Football and Other F Words are watching big dudes push around other big dudes for our betterment to tell us what they have learned early on in the draft process about the prospects down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Hello, Stoney. What's the best thing you've eaten this week in Mobile?
Good morning, gentlemen. The best thing that I have eaten, we got some like Delta style, which I guess is like the saltine cracker and the hot sauce tamales at a pizza place on our way in for day one of practice. And, you might question the tamales and hot sauce on your belly right before you're about to go sit outside and watch football for 6 hours. But I'm happy to report that I'm maintaining over here. Digestion is impeccable at this point.
And just asking the two of them to consider repercussions when you eat something that you probably shouldn't eat before you do something professional is not the path that I would go down, Stoney.
No, I told Zach yesterday, we were on our way into practice, and I was like, man, I feel like I need to eat a salad. And then we went to lunch, and I ordered a patty melt with tater tots and ate it. And then I told Zach, I'm like, I didn't get that salad. And then we stopped, and I got a salad. So I had 2 lunches yesterday on the way in. And you know what? It's just, it is a vacuum of time and space down here this week. There's so much going on. There's hardly a free minute. You just gotta roll with it. Whatever the vibes tell you, that's what you're doing.
Yes, Mobile, just done on vibes. Stoney Keeley reporting live from the Senior Bowl. They're doing daily Football and Other F Words updates from the Senior Bowl as far as the advanced scouting goes. There's a odd number of coaches who are not in attendance for this because of all of the late press conferences, the weirdness of the hiring cycle. So what is kind of the scene down there right now? Because my understanding is that there was also a handful of prospects who people were hopeful would be in attendance that also got derailed by some of the weather events going on around the country.
Yeah, attendance seems to be light this year. I mean, you look around the stands at any given moment, and it's about probably a third of what it usually is when we're down there. And that goes for the personnel side, too. So there's not – I mean, we haven't run into – usually you wander around town this week, and you're bumping into some coach, some personnel guy, some big media personality, and it just hasn't been the case this year. As far as Zach and I have noticed, we've only seen the Titan scouts down here. So I don't know if that's reflective of the larger NFL or if it's just a Titans decision because the staff is in turnover right now. But it does seem like the presence is much lighter here. And as for the opt-outs, I think they had something like 34 players opt out of the Senior Bowl. Part of that is due to injury. Part of that is due to, just the rigors of a long season. Part of that is the weather, the ice impacting people's ability to get down here. But I'll tell you, I'm thankful for it because it provides 34 other players that are more lesser known the opportunity to show up here and perform this week.
Good context. Stoney Keeley of Football and Other F Words here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
Stoney, as it pertains to a potential Titans need in the draft.
Also stacking the inbox. I'm sorry, Lucas. Stacking the inbox is where you can read his observations. My bad, Stoney.
Your favorite prospect that you've watched this week that could potentially help the Titans in 2026?
I'll tell you, a wide receiver that has completely blindsided me, blindsided everybody that's been down here is this kid from John Carroll University, which I still haven't even looked up where that is. I'm afraid of the things I'm going to have to do to acquire the John Carroll tape to actually study this kid. But Tyron Montgomery has been a consistent winner, probably made himself the most money this week. When you look at a guy that kind of came in at a bottom level and has immediately risen to make himself quite a bit of money in the draft this year. It's a guy that has some length to him, that has some speed. He's a really good polished route runner. Mixing things up, the underneath stuff, the in-breaking stuff with the deep stuff. He's kind of done it all pretty well down here. A guy that has flashed, probably a day 3 pick if he's drafted, but a guy that could add some value late. He's been a guy that I just haven't been able to take my eyes off of since I've been down here.
This is why we send people like Stoney to the Senior Bowl. to tell us about a wide receiver out of John Carroll as a potential hidden gem for the Titans in the draft. That's fantastic. How much has the Diego Pavia discussion taken over in Mobile? That was kind of the main headline up here was Pavia's measurements at 5'9". Has he drawn some eyeballs down there?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I'll give him credit. I mean, it's kind of funny that you talk to draft analysts down here, and the conversation around Pavia always starts with, well, he's probably not a player in the NFL, but is usually, well, he had a couple of really good bombs today. And there were a couple of times that there were some deep shots that he hit. I mean, they were just buckets at the sideline. And I turned around. I'm like, who threw that ball? And, it's not a knock on him, but he's shorter than everybody here. So it's like he walks back into the crowd of players and coaches that are at midfield sort of guiding this practice. And you're like, well, where did he go? Who was that? And you're scratching down. Oh, it's number 2. Who's number 2? Oh, that's Diego Pavia. So he keeps kind of surprising. And what we know about his character is that he is a guy that kind of rises to the challenge. And while I think the NFL kind of still looks at him as not a quarterback in the league, he's not listening to any of that. He's just out here dropping buckets 40 yards down the field. And I've been impressed with him. I've kind of been impressed by the quarterback group as a whole, some lesser known names this year, but Pavia has certainly had his moments this week.
How much does Garrett Nussmeier need at the Senior Bowl this week, given what his expectations were heading into his final season at LSU versus what ended up happening, which is he got benched?
Yeah, I think he's the one quarterback down here that's in the unique position of, if he really has a good week and improves his stock, like this is a guy that could be drafted into a potential competition to become a starter. He has that kind of talent. It's weird watching him on tape and then seeing him in person because he's kind of built. He kind of looks like Cam Ward, the same kind of frame. But he was a guy that had first-round expectations at one point. That dipped with the 2025 season. The tape was not as good as 2024. And now he's here to kind of prove he can get back into that upper echelon in a quarterback class that is wide open at this point. So, I mean, if you're looking at the third quarterback behind Fernando Mendoza, behind Ty Simpson, it's a debate, but Garrett Nussmeier is probably that guy right now, and he can cement his status as that guy this week with a good performance, whereas the rest of the quarterbacks here are kind of developmental guys that you take and you try to teach and see how they progress on down the road.
To keep it local, Stoney Keeley of Football and Other F Words with us, at Stoney Keeley on Twitter. 3 Tennessee players down there, Bryson Eason, the defensive tackle, corners Jalen McMurray and Colton Hood. I've seen some Colton Hood clips kind of surface out of Mobile. Has he sort of been the main headline grabber so far between those 3?
Yeah, of the 3, I think Hood has definitely been the best and the most consistent. But I do want to give a shout out to Jalen McMurray because I don't think the expectations were very high for him, but he's had a pretty decent week so far against this competition down here. But Hood has been consistent. He's won his fair share of reps. I don't think that any of these 3 have done anything to really pop. Like they're not getting much of the viral reps that are going like crazy on Twitter, but I think they've been steady. Bryson Eason, man, he has some juice, he has some pop, but has to get better in the balance department. They're running these individual drills down here where you're circling hula hoops and rounding dummies and hitting bags and all that stuff, and it felt like every other play Eason ended up on the ground. And, in this loaded defensive line group where there's a lot of steady guys, I think he's a guy that I'm looking for today to kind of step up a little bit and redeem himself in the last practice of the week.
So as you guys take in all of those practices and the lead up to the game this weekend, and Robert Saleh puts his staff together in Tennessee, how much have you been paying attention to some of the names popping up, especially on the offensive staff that seems to be filling out pretty quickly? And has anything stuck out more than anything else this week with the Titans?
Well, I will tell you, my partner in crime, Zach, has been all over the coaching staff hires. There are times when I'm like looking up from my practice film and he's telling me, oh, they got so-and-so from so-and-so staff in 2017 and he helped develop this player in 2020. And I'm just trying to it's like live bullets flying around me. I'm just trying to stay afloat in all this. But I will say that he's in there now working on. I think he's put together a list of the coaches that they have hired, their tenure in all of their different spots, and the types of players that they have coached in order to build a model that we can reference as potentially the type of player that the Titans could be looking for in this draft. So the grind don't sleep down here. I mean, we've both been at it with every waking moment of the day.
Well, that is very good work, and good on Zach for being willing to do that. But my intention, and I'm sure many other people today at the press conference, is just to ask them about what their kind of type of player would be. Is he doing this prematurely, and then he's going to fill in the blanks after the fact with some of these answers, or does he not trust what they're going to say at the podium?
Yeah, Buck, I wish you would have told us that like 2 days ago. Yeah. Maybe would have saved them a whole lot of work. No, I'm just kidding. Like, we're looking at like the data. So This is going to be, because I don't feel like the coaches are going to get up there and be like, yeah, we want our corners to be 6'2". They've got to have at least 32-inch arms. They've got to weigh 200 pounds, that sort of thing. And that's more specifically what Zach is digging into right now, trying to find those metrics to kind of look at who in this class matches that.
Hey, Stoney, my favorite thing that happens every year at the Senior Bowl is a smaller school offensive lineman that no one knew about or no one cared about, i.e. Cody Mock or Quinn Miners, comes in the Senior Bowl and blows everyone away. Am I correct in assuming that this year's Cody Mock would be Jennings Dunker? What have you seen from Jennings Dunker that leaves you optimistic that he could be this year's offensive lineman through style and name?
I'll tell you what, man. Dunker has the vibes. He's got the O-line aura. He is rocking a sweet, sweet mullet down here. I run kind of hot and cold with Dunker from the tape, and I thought he had a bit of a rocky day one, but something to keep in mind watching these drills is like they're kind of tailored towards the aggressor, right? So it's like the wide receiver knows the route that he's going to run, so the cornerback is at a disadvantage. The edge rusher knows he's got a one-on-one. He knows what he's going to hit, so the offensive lineman is at a disadvantage. So sometimes what you see is guys kind of take a day or two to adapt, and I think Dunker was one of those guys that kind of looked a little off balance on day one, but recovered nicely and showed better balance, better consistency in the second practice. The thing that I really like about Dunker is that he is down here telling people, I'll play wherever you need me. And we've seen him get reps at tackle. We've seen him get reps at right guard, at left guard. He's even been telling teams like he's going to be under center. He's going to be snapping the ball this week just to prove that he can play wherever a team needs him to play. And that's the kind of mindset you like in your offensive lineman.
Another guy that's primed to be a riser from the Senior Bowl is Texas Tech linebacker Jacob Rodriguez. It seems like he is all over the field. And when you look at where his draft status is currently, he's slated to be a day 3 guy. But I don't think that ends up being the way it falls during the draft. What have you seen from Jacob Rodriguez, and where does he end up being in the day 2, day 3 conversation?
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a day 2 guy to me. I mean, he looks like a guy that's kind of ready to play right now, and that's where you typically get your contributors, your starters, that sort of thing. He's been the headliner among the linebackers, and I know Kyle Lewis out of Pitt had a really good day yesterday, but he's kind of a smaller mold, coverage kind of linebacker, excels at those things, but when you look at the all-around totality of playing linebacker in the NFL, Jacob Rodriguez checks a whole lot of boxes. And, man, I'll tell you, I think there could be a sneaky need at linebacker for this team depending on the style of defense that Robert Saleh wants to implement here. Jacob Rodriguez has been feisty. He's been good in space, but he's also shown that he can be a little bit of a thumper, too. He's got a great build. He just looks like a linebacker. Some players you look at and you're just like, man, that's a dude right there. And Rodriguez has been one of those guys. He's been impressive this week.
Defensive linemen have been putting offensive linemen on skates, and while I do love good nicknames with Big Citrus, who you put me on with Dominic Orange, it seems like Darrell Jackson Jr. is taking everyone's milk that he comes across. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, man, it's a great group. I've spent most of my time this week watching the trenches, watching the D-line and the offensive line. Darrell Jackson Jr., a late add to the Senior Bowl. Big Citrus actually isn't down here. I don't know if his situation is weather related or injury related, but we don't get any Big Citrus down here in Mobile this week. But Jackson Jr. was a late add from the Shrine Bowl, had a good performance there in Texas, comes to Mobile, and, looks like there were maybe some jitters early on, but, man, once he got settled in the one-on-ones, he is a guy that is just thick, stretched out. He's got a long frame for a defensive lineman, but he can still get low. I love the hand placement. He will put his big old paws right on the middle of a man's chest and just back him down. And there was a rep that I think is going viral on Twitter right now that is just him just plowing through a guy, sitting him down, and you love to see that stuff sometimes. It's violence in its purest form.
That's how I like my defensive linemen, thick and stretched out. Appreciate it, Stoney.
He didn't laugh at your joke.
Yes, he did. He
just
chuckled.
I
heard
didn't
it.
pick it up.
I heard it.
Didn't pick
It's
it
okay.
up.
Stoney, Robert got in my ear 3 different times to tell me, I have one more question. I have one more question. I have one more question.
Listen, I got hours before the first practice, so I can sit here all morning if y'all want me to.
Well, as much as I would love that, Stoney, we're going to let you get on with your Senior Bowl preparation and your charting and your data and all these different things. Good work down there, and we'll catch up with you sometime soon.
Love you, Stoney.
Appreciate you guys. Love you too, Bert.
That's my buddy. That's the big natural right there.
Man led with a John Carroll wide receiver. That is what you love about Stoney Keeley. By the way, I asked him to give me a player.
Yeah.
And he led with a receiver from John Carroll, Titans front office assistant Dave Ziegler, a graduate of John Carroll University in Ohio.
Y'all know their mascot?
No.
Wait. Is it a catamount?
It is a blue stripe, but they have a Lobo. they are the John Carroll Blue Stripes. Or Blue Strips, one of the two.
Blue Strips.
Stoney Keeley, also great poet. He has a poetry book.
What?
Man of many talents.
About the plight of being Titans fans and
a poem about being a Titans fan?
Yeah, he gifted.
Why didn't you tell me that? I'd much rather have him on to talk about that.
He gifted Lucas and I when we had where was that show at? What was the brewery?
We were at Yazoo Brewing to kick off the college football season, and yeah, he gave us a copy. I mean, there are some poems about Titans football, but just about life.
You talk about him as if he's some kind of mythical creature, and I think I've had like one interaction with Stoney in my life.
He's a Renaissance man.
You need to hang out more often. Also, great candle evaluator. If you're ever worrying about a scent, you can send it to Stoney, and he will give you.
In my lane.
He will give you a draft-esque write-up on any Yankee candle, Woodwick. You let him know, and he will give you a write-up about what the best scent is for your significant other, for your house, the vibe you're going for. He truly is a Renaissance man.
All right. Very good. Apparently, this is just untapped resource that I haven't been taking advantage of. Bad job out of me.
I have an intro for Stoney's Scents, if we would ever like to do that.
Is there anything better than that song you played him in with?
The nookie, so you can take that cookie and stick it. What? And stick it. What? You don't like
I don't know what it is. I don't ever want to hear it again.
Oh, well. Stoney next week will have the nookie again.
All right. So the Vols won an overtime basketball game against Georgia last night. We'll talk about it coming up next. Welcome back to the show, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken, the best hot chicken in the world. So, the Vols able to grab a victory at Georgia in overtime last night, 86-85. Did you see, I'm sure you did, Rick Barnes' 850th victory?
Yep.
You know how long you got to be doing that job to get 850 wins in
Long
your
time.
career? It's just incredible.
Yep. Rick Barnes, the winningest active coach in all of college basketball.
Certainly, 39-year career. Jacoby Gillespie, we talked about it yesterday. He's been one of their best offensive performers the whole way through. 21 points, his third straight 20-point performance in this victory against Georgia. Got kind of clunky late, though.
It was clunky. It was weird. Tennessee was dominating some really critical numbers, but this was a tight game the whole way. They were absolutely destroying Georgia on the boards, yet were down 6 at halftime. They end up out-rebounding Georgia 52-27, and yet win by 1 point in overtime. This was the Danny/Mike White Bowl. Mike White, head coach at Georgia, Danny White, athletics director at Tennessee, are brothers, and Tennessee ends up winning a 6th straight over Georgia basketball, and they just have to eke it out. And the equalizer was, once again, the two things that have plagued Tennessee all year long, turnovers and free throws. 12 turnovers. Georgia only committed 6. Tennessee, 15 of 25 at the free throw line. Georgia, 14 of 20. This is a game that probably should have been won in regulation with the other areas of the game that Tennessee was winning. But good to see Nate Ament step up again with 19 points, and J.P. Estrella with a spark, 17 points, 9 rebounds, and maybe he's a guy that can start to string together some performances and become that third scoring option that Tennessee has struggled to find consistently outside of Ament and Gillespie.
Do I have this right, that they went from 1:08 left on the clock until 19 seconds to play before either team scored a point?
It was a weird game. It was one of those games that...
Just wanted to make sure that I didn't write that down incorrectly.
One of those games that when it goes to overtime, you're like, I don't really love the idea of having to watch 5 more minutes of this. But, yeah, Tennessee just gets the job done. This, besides the point, the court in Athens, what is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, what are we doing? Why do programs have to do this funky stuff with the court? Sometimes I think schools can pull it off, but that's the one. I don't have many uniform opinions, but that is one thing. Like 9 times out of 10,
It's just a weird look.
if your court is a different shade and they have a giant bulldog in the middle of it, like it was hard on the eyes. It was hard to watch. Georgia, you're not, just do a regular basketball court.
There's nothing wrong with it. Like the G logo is iconic.
Yeah.
Just leave the logo in the middle of it. You don't need the logo on top of your secondary logo. There's nothing necessary about that. Like, it's one of those things where I'm sure people of a certain generation be like, well, you're just getting old. They're doing that because it appeals to kids and recruits and things like that, like uniform changes and things of that nature. But I mean, I don't know. I don't really think that's not a stodgy old man opinion. I just think that it looks weird. It looks like half-assed. The bulldog is not filled in, which makes me think that they just kind of left the outline of the bulldog and they're like, we don't need to finish this.
The way this game ended was also very strange. Yeah. First of all, it probably should have ended in regulation. Tennessee had multiple opportunities at it. Jacoby Gillespie had a great look at the buzzer. It rims out. But at the end of the game in overtime, Tennessee is up 3. Georgia has the ball, seconds on the clock. And, Robert, I feel like you will appreciate this. There is a player on Georgia's roster by the name of Marcus Millender. He is known as Smurf. Smurf Millender. I'd be lying if I remembered why exactly his nickname is Smurf. But there are multiple Georgia fans, Robert, that dress like Smurfs at these games.
Like blue skin, or do they have red skin, like they're red Georgia Smurfs?
Blue. They look like the Blue Man Group, but they've got the little white Smurf hats. And it's part of the student section at Georgia. And at the end of this game, with seconds left, Georgia needs a 3 to force another overtime period. They're just kind of holding the ball outside of the 3-point line. They're passing it around. Time is ticking. And then Smurf Millender decides to drive with 2 seconds left. And Tennessee defenders are like, oh, you're going to do this? Yeah, go ahead. Give him a free path to the bucket. He lays it in with 0.6 seconds left. And then hands on head immediately realizes his mistake. And I thought it was hilarious for a player named Smurf Millender that has inspired Georgia fans to dress up like Smurfs at the game, to see a bunch of Smurf surrender Cobras because the guy named Smurf basically did a Nico or Joe Milton running out of bounds play with zeros on the clock.
God.
Lost them the basketball game by laying it up and in with half a second left on the clock.
That's so Smurfing stupid.
It was very, very comical towards the end there. It's just a weird ending to a weird game. Tennessee survives in Athens, and they move on Saturday.
Tyler on YouTube says, bro did not want to play another OT.
Yeah. It was so weird. The way Tennessee defenders just completely got out of his way. Like, oh, if this is happening, please be my guest.
So Tennessee played the role of Gargamel.
Yeah, yes.
That's the villain in Smurf.
Okay, yeah. I was between pretending like I knew who that was and asking you who that was, and I went with pretending.
No, your tell is the fake laugh, and then yeah.
Do you know Gargamel's cat's name?
No.
That loved to eat the Smurfs. Azrael. It's a great cat.
It's a good name.
Azrael?
Yeah, it's an orange cat too, and he's just
Orange cats, famously menace.
that will be my
yeah.
next.
I know that well.
Yeah, you live the orange cat life.
I do live the orange cat
Me
life.
and Cheyenne want a little Gingy baby so bad.
They
Told you I
are.
could give you that one we found in my yard.
I love Fat Ogre, but I
no,
don't think
not
Winston
the one, the kitten. The kitten that I can't remember. We ended up calling him
Baby Ogre?
Juice because
He's
Grace
worth the
was
squeeze.
calling him OJ. So I was like, oh, I don't know about OJ. Maybe we call him Juice.
His brother's name's Bronco.
Juice got adopted.
His brother's name is Gloves.
Yeah, that's exactly what my friend Blue wanted me to name Leo.
OJ or
Yes.
Juice?
Both. He's like, call him OJ, and then we'll just call him Juice. I was like, I don't want my cat to be named OJ.
Well, famously, orange cat's murderous behavior.
It is. They are murderous. Although Leo's not a fighter.
No.
He just likes to pretend to.
Yeah. He can't actually square up. If
Yep.
Tennessee had not melted down against Kentucky, we'd be talking about a 4-game win streak right now, and the Vols picking up all this momentum and going back
That
home to
Kentucky
host
loss
Auburn.
at home, though. It's just brutal, especially for
With what they did against
Kentucky
Vandy.
looks like.
Yeah.
They are just terrible. You want to talk about weird moments. And we talked about that inbounds play that Kentucky had again against Vanderbilt. Just brain fart moments. Poorly coached team. If you're Mark Pope, you really got to get that thing. Well, I can't use the phrase that I want to use because it's the Titans catchphrase, but you got to get that thing operating at a higher level.
You got to tighten it up.
I don't like that. I'm good on that. 615-737-1045 is the number. Speaking of which, I'm going to run over to the Titans practice facility, and we will do the press conference at 2. So I will leave the two of you in charge the rest away. What's coming up next?
Bill Belichick and the fallout from his lack of first ballot Hall of Fame induction has continued, and there's statements from everybody.
I'm Buck Risings, 104.5 The Zone.
11 o'clock on the nose. Good morning from the Circus Sports at the Mint Kentucky Downs 104.5 The Zone studio. I'm Lucas Panzica. This afternoon, the Titans will officially introduce Robert Saleh as the next head coach with a press conference beginning at 2 p.m. at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Saleh's staff starting to take shape in the meantime, especially on the offensive side of the ball, with Brian Dable official as the offensive coordinator. Paul Kaharski reported on Wednesday that former Giants assistant Carmen Brasillo will be the Titans offensive line coach. Former Giants QB coach Shea Tierney set to join the Titans in the same capacity. College basketball, Tennessee won on the road in overtime at Georgia 86-85. Jacoby Gillespie led the way, 21 points and 6 assists. Nate Ament with 19 points and 6 rebounds as the Vols move to 4-3 in SEC play. The Nashville Predators road trip continues today at the Devils. Puck drop is at 6 p.m. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back to the show. Buck headed to the Titans facility ahead of the press conference. I'll head there afterwards to watch Robert Saleh officially be introduced at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Meanwhile, the staff being put together more on the offensive side of the ball, as that is almost complete. Brian Dable went to work as soon as he was announced by the Titans the other day. A few defensive additions still waiting to see who Robert Saleh's defensive coordinator will be. Understanding Saleh, of course, will be the defensive play caller. So much to get to on that front, which we will do later on in the show. We'll hear from Greg Cosell and his opinion on the fit with Brian Dable and Cam Ward within this Titans offense coming up at 11:20. Of course, Titans legend Nate Washington will join us and give his thoughts coming up at 12:20. Nate, who worked with Brian Dable for a time in New England when Dable was the tight ends coach towards the end of Nate Washington's career. But, Robert, there has been more and more fallout from this Bill Belichick situation. As we know, he is not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Bill Polian is who everybody was pointing fingers at. He has put out a written statement. He read it on SiriusXM. We have got the Pro Football Hall of Fame releasing statements, essentially saying that it can remove voters who violated bylaws. If you're wondering what bylaws they're talking about revealing conversations that happened in that virtual room to the public. Here's what the NFL Pro Football, or what the, not the NFL Pro Football, but what the Pro Football Hall of Fame had to say in relation to the class of 2026. The Hall of Fame understands and respects the passionate reaction of many fans, media members, and enshrinees of the Hall itself in light of published reports regarding the voting results for the class of 2026. It's that very passion that propels the game. The Hall also respects the members of the selection committee when they follow the selection process bylaws. It is an honor to serve as a selector. Each year, the Hall reviews the selection process and the composition of the 50-person selection committee. If it is determined that any member violated the selection process bylaws, they understand action will be taken. That could include the possibility that such selectors would not remain a member of the committee moving forward. The selection of a new class is the most important duty the Hall of Fame oversees each year, and the integrity of that process cannot be in question. So, I don't know, Robert, almost sounded like a bit of a warning shot, as this feels like the most controversial Pro Football Hall of Fame decision or result that we've had in quite some time, right? It's not recency bias to say this is one of the most discussed topics on any Pro Football Hall of Fame class. Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer.
It kind of feels like do you remember when Joe Flacco won Comeback Player of the Year? And then after that, the committee put out something that said, this is not the name of this award is supposed to highlight this and this and this. But they didn't really change anything about it. They just wanted to remind the voters, hey, exactly what you said, kind of like a warning. But the more people that have came out and talked about this, like I voted for people who have been waiting. A lot of people have been giving their reasoning as why they didn't go with Bill Belichick. I'm understanding how it could come about that he wasn't selected. It still doesn't make sense to me, but I'm understanding the rationale of why he didn't get in this year. But again, it is the toughest Hall of Fame in sports to get into. Not baseball, because baseball doesn't put in the best players if they have some kind of scrutiny in their past. Betting, Pete Rose isn't in the Baseball Hall of Fame. The Basketball Hall of Fame is about total career. So the Pro Football Hall of Fame, in my opinion, is the utmost, the highest level of sports Hall of Fame that you can be in. So I appreciate them putting that out there to uphold the sanctity of that Hall of Fame.
So what you're referencing there is this voter for the Kansas City Star. Now, forgive me if I'm butchering this first name. Is it Vahe? V-A-H-E is the first name here. Gregorian. Gregorian.
Yeah, is he from Game of Thrones?
Strong name. Yeah, what house is that in Game of Thrones? Vahe Gregorian. That's incredible. So he kind of explained his rationale a little bit and said, in fact, I did not vote. This is, by the way, he did not vote for Bill Belichick. He was one of the voters in the Hall of Fame process that did not vote for Bill Belichick to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He said, I did not vote against Belichick or Kraft. I voted for the three senior candidates, Ken Anderson, Roger Craig, and L.C. Greenwood. You could call that rationalizing, I suppose, and I'm suddenly reminded of the fortune cookie wisdom that you should never try to explain since your friends don't need it and your enemies won't believe it anyway. But he continues and says, all of that went into why I felt duty-bound to vote for the richly deserving seniors who most likely won't ever have a hearing again as more senior candidates enter the pool and fresh cases get made for others. Meanwhile, Belichick is inevitable soon, as he should be. At the risk of contradicting my own vote, really, he shouldn't even have to wait. I understand why people are offended that he is not going in the first moment he can. In the end, though, I felt more compelled by what I perceived to be last chances and looming lost causes within the system as we have it, a system I hope the Hall will see fit to change now. So not only explaining his rationale, but also subtly calling for change in the voting process for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Did this make you feel any better about the fact that Bill Belichick will not be a first ballot Hall of Famer, so you can direct your attention less to the voters, right, and what Bill Polian may or may not have said, and more to the system in and of itself and the idea that Bill Belichick's gonna get in. Let's give these guys an opportunity if we feel they're worthy in what could be their final chance.
It helped my understanding, but no, it did not change my process of thinking that he should have been in. Why have those elder statesmen not been voted in yet? Because it is a selective Hall of Fame. If they were supposed to be in my opinion, they would have been voted in long ago. If their case to be in the Hall of Fame was so strong, the case for many of the Hall of Famers, that makes this the best Hall of Fame, they should have been in already. I don't like this pity case of, oh, they may not have another chance to get in. What happens about all these? Well, then they obviously weren't good enough. There was someone who is good enough, without the shadow of a doubt. Those people should be getting the votes. So while I understand what he is trying to say, I still disagree with what he is saying.
615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Does that rationale make you feel any better about Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Hall of Famer? Robert, can we hear from Bill Polian on Sirius XM, who kind of came out in his own defense after being named in that ESPN article, the allegation that he was talking to other voters about why Bill Belichick should have to wait for his alleged involvement in Spygate and all of these things that kind of were blips in the radar along Bill Belichick's legendary career as the head coach of the Patriots. This was Bill Polian reading his own written statement on Sirius XM.
It would be very easy for me to say what you've shared with us and to kind of clear the air, but best to just ask you to share the facts of everything that's gone on in your words, how we got here, and exactly what your vote was about Bill Belichick.
All right, thank you. I wrote this out, so I'm reading from the statement. I voted for Coach Belichick in the Hall of Fame selection meeting. The Pro Football Hall of Fame has confirmed that fact through the auditors of the selection process. Again, I'll state that I never said that I believe that Coach Belichick should, quote, wait a year, close quote, for enshrinement. This has been confirmed by the Pro Football Hall of Fame, numerous selectors who were in the room, and my vote for Coach Belichick. As a Hall of Fame member and selector, I realize the import of what we do. I've always tried, as a selector, to make these difficult choices with the utmost of objectivity. I've said on SiriusXM Radio and numerous other media outlets that I believe Coach Belichick to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. My vote confirms that.
So there's Bill Polian coming to his own defense on SiriusXM, denying essentially everything that was said in the ESPN article, which to me has to be the onus of this statement from the Pro Football Hall of Fame, right? And Mike Sando spoke up on this, who's covered this extensively of The Athletic. And he said, I don't speak for the Hall of Fame, but bylaws forbid voters from sharing details of conversations that took place in meeting. This happened in the ESPN story, which quoted anonymous voter, not as source of Belichick news, but regarding what might have been said in the meeting, said by Bill Polian. So we've got a he said, she said battle about a meeting, the voting process, and how Bill Belichick ends up not being a first ballot Pro Football Hall of Fame inductee.
They need to have a reconvening of the minds and understand, what are we doing here? What is the goal of this committee? Are we trying to make sure that we get as many good people in this Hall of Fame as possible? Or are we trying to get the people who are most warranted, who have deserved that spot the most, to get in? I think it should be the latter. I don't think we should be trying to shoehorn people in here just because, oh, they're older, or, oh, this might be their last chance. If they were supposed to be in, they would have been in.
615-737-1045. Does any of this make you feel any better about Bill Belichick not being a first ballot Pro Football Hall of Famer? Dan in Lewisburg is up next. Hey, Dan.
Daniel.
Dan going once. All right, good stuff from Dan in Lewisburg.
Dang. Had high hopes for Daniel.
Cool as you like. So I'm just fascinated by this. I'm fascinated because I have never seen, Robert, this sort of outcry about a Hall of Fame discussion. And it's a great topic. We've talked about it all the time, the idea of Eli Manning and Drew Brees, and should they not be first ballot Hall of Famers. I think we have the most fun in regards to the quarterback position with these discussions. But this is such a lightning strike of a result from a Hall of Fame vote that it has created such widespread discussion to have the Hall of Fame itself putting out a statement in what feels like threatening voters that if you violate bylaws, if you continue to share information that's happening behind these closed doors, we have the power to change the 50 voters, is just fascinating to me.
Well, and we learned some more about people who would not be named finalists. Eli Manning.
Yeah.
Oh, if Eli's supposed to be in this Hall of Fame, if he is supposed to be, this is his second time being denied, where's the outrage for him? Oh, maybe it's because the quarterbacks that he was going against are much more worthy of being put in the Hall of Fame than he is. I wish they could have used this logic to get Bill in as well. But we did get the finalists. We have the people that will be up for Hall of Fame voting. It's Larry Fitzgerald, Drew Brees, Luke Kuechly, Reggie Wayne, Torrey Holt, Frank Gore, Jason Witten, Jari Evans, Kevin Williams, and then some finalists complicate the conversation with Adam Vinatieri, Willie Anderson, who is another man who has been waiting patiently to get in. It's tough for offensive linemen to get in. Terrell Suggs, Marshall Yonda, Darren Woodson, and Eli Manning, who is out.
There you go.
Only 3 of the 5 players that I listed in that second group will be selected.
Do you believe Bill Polian when he says he did not say any of those things that are alleged and that he did vote for Bill Belichick?
He couldn't even remember that he's 95% sure he voted for him. What if that 5% chance includes him talking about this? If you can't remember what you said, how can you be believed that you didn't say something?
That is pretty crazy. We did just kind of gloss over that, right? To be 95% sure, a vote that happened 2 weeks ago. That one's tough for me.
And that's
a tough one.
That's also a tough percentile to land on. Like, hey, Cheyenne, there's a 95% chance I'll spend the night at home tonight. What is the other 5%? You never know. I might meet a woman. I might want to go out to a nice dinner date. You don't know. 95%. Like, why not just say you either know or you don't? You either know or you don't.
Better luck next time, Bill Belichick. Well, we know Greg Cosell is a Hall of Fame film watcher, and when we come back, we will hear Cosell talk about the fit with Brian Daboll as Robert Saleh's offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans next.
If you're noticing issues with ED or performance, then your relationships, your confidence, and even your career may have already been affected. Guys, no more excuses. The Tennessee Men's Clinic is the state's first men's health-focused urology practice. Multiple urologists and providers focus solely on male performance. Online folks will promise you convenience and discretion, but their treatments are generic and some even unsafe. No unproven snake oil or peptides without solid research at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. Since 2014, they've pioneered men's health in Tennessee and have been testing and growing to make sure you get the best care and the safest, most effective treatments. Call 615-208-9090. That's 615-208-9090 right now, or book online in under 30 seconds at TennesseeMen'sClinic.com.
Welcome back to the show. Presented by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Great way to warm up in these freezing conditions. Hope more of you are getting your power back if you have not already. Robert, you are fully with power, with heat, back to normal, yes?
I am fully operational.
I fear it may be a couple weeks for me. I'm starting to think that this is going to get into some long, drawn-out territory. As I am just one individual home without power, with the line directly connected to my house being the one that's down, which is bottom of the priority list, as it should be.
Yeah, I think we should take matters into our own hands. Go over there and just fix it. You have any experience with electrical?
We'll figure it out.
Bring some rubber gloves.
I think we're in it for the long haul. I don't know how long of a haul Brian Daboll is in it for as the Titans offensive coordinator. We had this discussion yesterday, the idea of preemptively being concerned about Brian Daboll being a one-and-done offensive coordinator under Robert Saleh and kind of giving you that conundrum with the defensive-minded head coach, finding success on offense, and then having to pivot and seeing just how much that can stop momentum in its tracks for certain teams around the league, right? Seeing it happen in Detroit, seeing it happen. We'll see what happens in Washington. Injury is a huge reason for them. Now Cliff Kingsbury is out. Dan Quinn looks to pivot. Those are good problems. Titans haven't had good problems in a long time. So I think it would be great for the Titans to have some measure of success in year one of the Robert Saleh, Brian Daboll, Cam Ward partnership to get it to a point where other teams want to hire Brian Daboll as the head coach because of what he did with Cam Ward in his second year as a pro quarterback. Those are good problems. So what does that fit look like? Greg Cosell, smarter than any of us about these things, spoke on it on the latest episode of The Install. With Buck, you can tune out the Buck parts, listen to the Greg parts. Here is Greg Cosell on The Install this week, talking about the fit with Brian Daboll as the Titans offensive coordinator.
Welcome into The Install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Greg, it's been, there's no actual victories in January, but Titans fans are pretty happy about the idea of Robert Saleh, who will give his introductory press conference here in about 4 hours from now, as a matter of fact, and the marriage of him with Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator, which came to fruition in the last couple of days.
What I really like about it, and again, no one knows what's going to happen, but all we have is what we have, is they hired veteran coaches who've been around the league. I really like the fact that they hired Daboll, who's been around. His background is really strong. He's been with Nick Saban. Obviously, he was a major factor in helping Josh Allen become a really good NFL quarterback. So there's a pedigree there with both coaches. I mean, to me, that's what you wanted. I think, and I know that they've also, hired some other coaches, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. Other than Shea Tierney as the quarterback coach, I'm not necessarily familiar with a lot of the names, but, I don't have to be. And I don't necessarily follow all the O-line coaches in the NFL, but I mean, they have veteran coaches, guys who've been in the NFL. And I think that's important. And I think it's really important for a young quarterback. We know Salah, it's going to be his defense. And he's very good, very respected. So, again, you don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, there's personnel involved. You need players, and we'll see what happens with free agency in the draft. It should be kind of a fun time with both of those things this year for the Titans. And, of course, we'll be doing that again, which will be wonderful. But, I think everything is pointing in the right direction, as we speak today, and that's all we have.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll learn more from Saleh today. Obviously, he won't give us the entire plan at the press conference today, but just to talk about some philosophical things, the way that he'd like this thing to look, and some 1,000-foot view topics that we're looking forward to talking to him about later this afternoon. So let's get into Daboll's offense a little bit, because this guy's been around for a long time. 4 different offensive coordinator stops, Greg, in the NFL with 4 different franchises. His longest stint, of course, with Buffalo before he became the head coach of the New York Giants, where he called some plays sometimes, and then other times it was Mike Kafka. Obviously, they're working with him on the offensive side of the ball. That we know that they liked Cam Ward because they tried to trade up to get Cam Ward last year, as Adam Schefter reported. And so there is at least some groundwork that has been done on the Titans quarterback prior to him accepting this job. What kind of stands out about the way that Brian Daboll wants to operate, understanding that it won't be exactly the same scheme everywhere?
Right. Well, I think there's a couple of things that I think stand out. Again, and some of this could obviously change based on Cam Ward. You dance with the girl who brung you, as it were. I mean, Cam Ward is a different quarterback, let's say, than some of the quarterbacks that Brian Dable has been with. I think that one thing that does stand out is he's not necessarily a big shift motion guy, and in some ways, I don't think that's a bad idea with a young quarterback. Because, look, I know a lot of people talk about, hey, you can't run an offense in today's NFL unless you're doing a lot of pre-snap movement. There's obviously many different philosophies on that. There's no right or wrong on that. I think sometimes with a young quarterback, you want him to get to the line of scrimmage. You want things to be somewhat static so he can see the defense. And one thing that I think is important and does stand out is Dable does get his quarterback to the line of scrimmage pretty quickly. It's not one of those where they're at the line of scrimmage and there's 5 seconds left on the play clock. So this way, if you don't do a lot of pre-snap movement, your quarterback can get a feel for the defense, see what it is, have a sense. I don't know if Cam Ward will be the one that might make adjustments or if it will be the offensive center who, if it's Cushenberry, I think he's still under contract, is he not, based on his deal?
He is. It's a big cap hit this year, so it'll be curious to see what they end up doing. But for right now, Lloyd Cushenberry's here.
Okay, so let's say it's a veteran center. Let's say they might want the center to be the one that deals with the protections and all that. Because when you learn a new offense, and he'll be learning a new offense, Cam Ward, obviously, you don't want to overload the quarterback mentally because then he's thinking through the game way too much. And Cam Ward strikes me as a part of his game is built on instinct and feel. And having had a chance to talk with him, he's a very sharp guy. I don't want people to think I'm saying he can't handle it, but it's about maximizing what he can do, because he's learning a new offense. And the bottom line is when you learn a new offense, most coaches tell you it's a 2 to 3 year process. And again, that doesn't mean you can't function in year one, but then you have to determine the best way for him to function at the highest level. And you don't want to overload him with too many things. So I think the fact that Brian Daboll in his background has not been big with shifts and motions, that's probably going to be the case. The other thing that kind of stands out, which would be totally different from this year, is Brian Daboll is much more of a 2x2 set guy as opposed to a 3x1 set guy. Whereas this year, the Titans were among the highest percentage in the league in lining up in 3x1 sets. And I think he'll do a lot more of 2x2 sets. That gives you much more of an opportunity to do mirrored route concepts, which also define the picture better for the quarterback. So I think that there's a number of things that seemingly, as we just speak about it now, that would help Cam Ward sort of get acclimated to the fact that everything's going to be brand new.
Yeah, it's to your point about the personnel groupings that Brian Daboll favors, at least. And again, just looking at last year's Giants offense, Greg, on some of the numbers and where his tendencies were, understanding that Jackson Dart and Cam Ward are not the same kind of player. They were in 11 personnel 60% of the time, which was just below league average. It ended up 17th in terms of personnel grouping. A lot more 12 personnel, a lot of shotgun, and a lot of RPO.
RPO, that's the other thing I wanted to mention. He's a big RPO guy, Daboll. And I think, again, that's another thing that's probably a good thing, because those are not difficult reads. You're essentially reading one guy to decide what you do with the football as the quarterback. And so I think the RPO game is a significant part of what Daboll does.
Yeah, and I remember talking with you, Greg, when you were here in training camp about Cam Ward's RPO background, for lack of a better term, because they did do that with him at Miami. When they got to Tennessee, it did not seem like it was something that they tried it a little bit in training camp. Once they got into the regular season, though, it didn't really seem to manifest that way.
Well, and that, that's a function of coaches. I mean, some coaches are not big RPO guys, and obviously that coaching staff did not believe in RPOs as a foundation of an offense. Brian Daboll does. And I think that'll be helpful. I think the RPO game will be, because it's a good way. Like I said, number one, it's an easy read. You're basically reading one guy. What do you You read that one guy, it's a second level player. Do you hand it off? Do you throw it? And it's a good way to sustain offense, because if you feel that the run game is effective based on how that player reacts, ideally you gain 4 or 5 yards. If you feel that you throw it, it's normally and a quick in breaker. It doesn't have to be, but normally it is. And you can end up with 7, 8 yards, and maybe he breaks a tackle and you get 15 yards. So I mean, it's a good way to sustain offense.
The other thing, and this may not necessarily be a tactical question, Greg, so maybe it's not something that we can answer, but I'm just curious, given Daboll's recent history, right? The quarterbacks that he's worked with, whether it be Allen, Dart, Daniel Jones, even Jalen Hurts at Alabama, they have a little bit more instinctual mobility, we'll call it, to their game than somebody like Cam Ward does. I don't know if Daboll is going to try and do some of those things with Cam Ward. I don't know how much of that was just the players, leaning on what was a part of their game. In the case of Allen and Dart, we know that mobility and running the football is a big part of who they were in college prior to them even getting to the NFL. So that's just another thing that I'm curious about this year.
I know that the previous coaching staff did feel that they wanted Cam to run a little more.
Yes.
You know that. Now, again, that doesn't mean you run, look, I think someone like Dart ran too much. That's my personal opinion. Maybe the Giants, I would assume they probably agreed because he missed games because of that. And I thought there were times later in the season that Cam did leave the pocket appropriately, to run for some first downs. So, and I think in today's NFL, that has become an increasingly meaningful part. It doesn't mean your quarterback has to have 15 carries. I mean, we just saw in the AFC Championship game what turned out to be a really significant part of that game. A critical feature for the Patriots was Drake May, with those runs, because they didn't really account for him, which was somewhat surprising. We'll see what Mike McDonald does in the Super Bowl, because they're a team that hasn't used a spy very much. But there are many ways to account for a quarterback that can break the pocket, not just a spy. But I think that the Cam Ward because Cam Ward has mobility. Is he an explosive athlete? No, but he certainly is a functional athlete who can run for first downs. So it wouldn't surprise me if encourage might not be the right word, but let him know that, hey, that's okay. You can do that.
Yeah, and to your point, Bo Hardigree was certainly encouraging him to do that. We talked to Bo in several different instances. I'm sure you did as well, and I know you sat in on a variety of different meetings with them last year during your visits here. The idea that they would show him tape cut-ups of different players, specifically Patrick Mahomes, and where he would tactically or strategically use his legs to extend drives.
And that's the way you want to do it. No one coaches a quarterback to say, drop back, hit your back foot, and just take off. No one coaches a quarterback to do that. But hey, look, there are times the defense wins, and your quarterback has to save you in those times. And look, there's the quarterback position. I love talking about it. We're not getting into a whole discussion of the quarterback position, but there are times that the defense does win, and if you have the ability then to save your offense with your legs, you'd love to be in a position that your quarterback can do that.
And I did not ask you about this before we started taping, Greg. So if you don't have an answer for it, that's just fine, or are not able to answer it right now. But some additional hirings that were made by the Titans yesterday. Shea Tierney is going to coach quarterbacks. He's been with Brian Daboll for some time. Carmen Brasillo, I believe, is how I pronounce the name of the offensive line coach. He is also going to join Brian Daboll's staff after 2 years in New York with him, prior to being with the Raiders and the Patriots. Before that, I know you were at O-line Masterminds. I don't know if you've had any conversations with him previously.
Don't know him, but didn't they just hire Greg Lewis as the wide receivers coach?
They did also hire Greg Lewis from the Ravens.
I'm familiar with, and he's considered a really good wide receivers coach. Really, he coaches hard, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's he's been around. He's been with some good coaches in his career. I think that to me was a good hire. I don't know the O-line coach at all. So I'll just being honest with you. I don't know him, so I can't comment on him. But Greg Lewis, that I thought was a good hire, particularly for young wide receivers, because young wide receivers, I think, when they get to the league and they just realize how much more physical it is, and the fact that you've got to block, And that's important, and and you can teach receivers how to block. Okay, that's the thing. I don't think anybody drafts receivers in the top 50 or 60 because of the way they block, but you can teach guys how to block. And then it becomes a mentality. And I think Greg Lewis has that mentality, and I think that's really important.
Well, because that's the kind of second level discussion for us, because obviously we talk about these things. You've said it many, many times correctly. So all of these things need to be done in service of helping Cam Ward succeed as the number one overall pick. But they do also have so many other young offensive players, in particular those three skill guys, that Titans fans are also wondering, okay, how is this going to help Alec Ayaman take another step? Chimere Dike potentially become a more well-rounded player. Guys like Gunnar Helm, things that we don't even have the full staff yet, but this is kind of where the next step would be.
And Iomanner's a big dude. I mean, you want to be in a situation in your run game where, you can line him up maybe in a reduced split and he's going to have to block a filling safety and, he's got to block him. He doesn't have to put him on his back, but he's got to block him. I mean, you watch teams like the Seahawks and the Rams, the way they run the ball and their receivers, they block. 49ers, they block. And you can teach that. I remember speaking with a wide receivers coach who came to watch film with me a couple of years ago, and we were actually talking about evaluating wide receivers. And he said to me, look, when I evaluate wide receivers, I just watch their targets, but because you can teach them how to block.
Yeah.
Now, again, there's a mentality there. You certainly don't want to draft a wide receiver who you feel has no physical component to his game whatsoever, but you can teach guys how to do that. They don't have to pancake guys.
No, this is more, a cliche, but it also holds true. Like the Titans are trying to find an offensive identity, and they were getting closer to that towards the end of last season. But to kind of reestablish themselves as a physical team that wants to take pressure off the quarterback, that wants to run the football, kind of more central to who that franchise has been just on their DNA. I know that's obviously not how coaches approach it, but still.
The other thing that's interesting about Dable is I think the year was 2022 when they had two backs, because I think they had Barkley then. And I think it was Matt Breida, if memory serves me correctly. And I thought he did some really good things out of what we call the pony package, where you have two halfbacks on the field. And if you can do that, and again, I don't know what the Titans plan. Again, we're way off, free agency in the draft as far as, what they're looking at. So I'm not going to say it. But I mean, if you can do that and you can detach one back. I mean, look, there's not 100 Bijan Robinsons, obviously, but the Falcons had such good success when they were able to play both Algier and Robinson because 20% of Robinson's snaps came in detached from the formation. But as I said, there's not 100 of those guys. But still, there are guys like that. And I know that they had good success doing that. And I think the year was 2022. So it'll be interesting to see, what they do in free agency in the draft as far as the running back position.
Well,
Greg Cosell with Buck on the latest episode of The Install, which you can watch on the 104.5 The Zone YouTube page. Subscribe while you're there or listen wherever you get your podcasts. Stamp of approval from Greg Cosell on the Titans coaching staff, which we will go into more detail on what we know coming up at 12 o'clock. More additions to the Bald Brigade, Robert. Might have to pull out the bald caps.
I love it. Well, they add that, what's his name, Tyranny?
Shea Tierney, the reported quarterbacks coach who comes over from New York.
He needs to Shirani that hair off. He needs to join the Bald Brigade and stop clinging to yesteryear with that hair. Go ahead and let us see that shiny bald dome, buddy.
We'll tell you the latest on the Titans coaching staff that is being filled out under Robert Saleh as we await his introductory press conference at 2. We will do that with the coaching staff at the top of the hour. But coming up next, there are 2 jobs left open in the NFL. What is the latest on the Raiders and the Cardinals? We'll tell you next. It is chilly out there. Seems like it's going to be for quite a while. One great way to warm up in this weather is, of course, with Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Hope all of you are staying safe, staying as warm as humanly possible. Heat up this winter weather with a big old bucket of Hattie B's crispy jumbo wings. Hot or not, whatever works for you. There are healthy options as well. Grilled or fried, the southern salads with the cornbread croutons. There is something for everybody, and it is a great escape from this icy winter weather. Of course, you can head to any one of their 7 Middle Tennessee locations. Of course, pending the weather, we know for sure that the factory at Franklin is open and that the Lower Broadway location is open. You can go to HattieB.com, download the Hattie B's app. When you do that, you get a free dessert simply by doing so. And as you go ahead and start to plan out the big game festivities coming up in Santa Clara, make sure Hattie B's Hot Chicken is on your list for your watch party. Whether you're going to a buddy's house and need to bring something, or you're just watching at home with your family with a bucket of Hattie B's Hot Chicken in hand, and heat up this winter weather with Hattie B's today. All right, 8 down, 2 to go in this insane NFL coaching carousel. Welcome back to the dulcet tones of Sade on this Thursday. Robert Saleh set to meet with the media for the first time as Titans head coach at 2 p.m. Headed over there after this. Buck is at the facility now. Robert and myself with you until 1 o'clock, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Great way to warm up with these icicles melting off of power lines and bombing onto the street like missiles. Be careful out there and stay warm. So, Atlanta hires Kevin Stefanski. Miami hires Jeff Hafley. The Giants hire John Harbaugh. Baltimore hires Jesse Minter. Pittsburgh goes with Mike McCarthy. Buffalo promotes Joe Brady. Cleveland brings in Todd Monken. That's still a mess with the Jim Schwartz situation. Do you see Myles Garrett taking to Instagram with the old Popeyes worker bent over on a bench meme?
I'm prone to, is it Ben Affleck smoking the cigarette after walking out of his house? I'm prone to that.
Also a great I'm over this kind of indication in this modern world of the internet. And then Tennessee, of course, with Robert Saleh, and his staff is starting to come together. That leaves Arizona and Las Vegas as the two teams without a head coach. Some news on that front today. Earlier this morning, Diana Rossini tweeted that candidates up for either the Arizona or Raiders head coaching jobs were informed there is still one more interview to be conducted with another candidate, per sources. So, mystery candidate floated out there. And then Jeremy Fowler reports, Robert, that the Raiders do plan to interview Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator of the Seahawks, over the weekend, and then make a decision on their head coach. One candidate predicted about the Raiders job, it is probably Kubiak's to lose. Now, as we know, the Seahawks are in the Super Bowl, but I suppose Seattle can grant permission for Clint Kubiak to interview during this week off ahead of the Super Bowl for either of these two jobs. So maybe the mystery candidate is Clint Kubiak, who has not done his second interview with either the Raiders or the Cardinals. Maybe it's somebody else. But isn't it kind of crazy that we don't have definitive finalists for both of these jobs at this point in the process?
Yeah, but they were also both bottom of the barrel. Right. They were both, neither one of them were perceived to be one of the better jobs in the cycle. And also note on the Clint being able to interview, because as we understood it, as we talked about it, they would have had to wait. And you noted Peter Schrager's reporting on it that Seattle allowed him to go do that, which is also kind of a question mark. Like you would think that he would want all of his time being used to scheme for the offense against the Patriots defense. But I don't know if I would have allowed him to do that, especially considering like he might leave and you got to replace him. He might leave and go to a divisional rival.
No, surely he wouldn't leave before the Super Bowl.
That'd be tough. He'd still coach it, but that's
a college football thing.
And that was the next thing. For her to note that they are interviewing one more candidate, generally that means it is a college candidate, because that can hurt their recruiting. It can hurt their relationship with the college that they're coaching at. So generally, when you see they're interviewing someone like that, the way she framed it, it is not someone in the NFL. If you had to guess, because I have a guess, who do you think they would be interviewing in the college ranks for either one of those two head coaching jobs? Let's see if you can land the exact same place I am. It's a guy that early in his career was thought of, hey, this guy is going to make the jump pretty quickly. He was shoehorned into Dallas. I think Lincoln Riley.
Oh, wow.
Is the guy that they're interviewing. West Coast guy has been at USC for, 4 or 5 years now at this point. He has not been able to get them over the hump and to relevance that they thought they were going to be when they stole him from Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley would look a lot like an NFL head coach to me.
Just hired Gary Patterson as the new defensive coordinator at USC. That kind of went under the radar the other week in the midst of all of this NFL coaching craziness.
I'd maybe point one of your eyes at it, just something to look at. And I don't know that. That's just my guess. But if they were interviewing someone, I think we would know their name if there wasn't a conflict of interest.
Jeffrey on the FNM Bank chat says Bill Belichick.
Yeah. I'm gonna reset my voting so I can be a first ballot on the second time.
What do I have to do? Do I have to catch up to Don Shula? Do I have to get those? What is it, like 15 wins, whatever he is behind Don Shula? I'll do it.
Yeah, have fun doing that in the AFC West or the NFC West.
615-737-1045. Of course, the FNM Bank chat also jumping on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. 1045 The Zone TV, where Titan Scott says the Raiders fans on Twitter thought they had the top job available. How the tables have turned. Is it such a slam dunk that the Las Vegas Raiders job is that much better than the Arizona Cardinals job is?
I think it's the opposite.
You think the Cardinals job is better than the Raiders job?
Yes. I think their roster is much closer to being a competent roster than the Raiders is.
We've talked about it with Vegas. Not as tough a division as the NFC West, but still a brutal division to try and pick yourself up and rebuild a franchise between the Chargers and the Chiefs and the Broncos. Understanding the Chiefs were down this year, but the windows that all three of those teams are in with their respective quarterbacks and their respective head coaches, you have the number one overall pick in the draft. You have a couple of parts and pieces that are fun and you can build around, but it is a blank canvas job, right? The Las Vegas Raiders job for a franchise that has not won much of anything in the last 20 plus years. The Cardinals job, what is it to you then? Is it about what they have in place on that roster that kind of gets overlooked? The idea that they may not be as far away as people like to think with the parts and pieces like a Trey McBride and a Marvin Harrison Jr. and a Walter Nolan, despite their quarterback situation, which has no easy answer in sight.
For the Raiders.
I'm talking about the Cardinals.
For the Cardinals. I mean, there is an easy answer in place. It's to bring Kyler back. But I think outside of quarterback, you have a lot more high-level blue-chip players than the Raiders do. The Raiders have a tight end who I think is not as good as Trey McBride is. They have their milk at running back. I'll give you that. Trey Benson is not Ashton Genty. But at wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., who was a high pick in the draft. A lot of people being like, oh, he's not that good. He's got a drop problem. He's a good player. He's a good young player, and he's built like a brick bleep house. And then you look at another guy who's succeeded in that offense with Jacoby Brissett, who's going to be a free agent this offseason, Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson was like a phenom at the end of the year for them. I like what they're doing with their offensive line. They don't have a ton of pieces in place, but being able to find a center in Freeholt and Paris Johnson Jr., former Ohio State guy. I just like the build of their roster. They have dudes. The Raiders have, like, what does Coach Mack call Roys? They have Roys. They have the rest of y'alls. The island of misfit toys that didn't fit anywhere else that they've parsed and pieced it together to try to make a half-decent team. Do you remember in the offseason we were talking about the Raiders and Buck was unabashed that they were going to be, there's no way that under the leadership and they have so much experience that they wouldn't be a good team. They had the first overall pick. Their roster is what we were saying the Patriots roster is. It's devoid of talent. Outside of Bowers and Genty, what really gets you excited on either side of the ball? Fernando Mendoza. Like that's it.
Yeah.
I'm not tickled with anything outside of Max Crosby on their defense, and he's about to get shipped off.
I can't shake this feeling, too, in this carousel, with 10 jobs being filled, that the demand is greatly outweighing the supply of good head coaches, guys that are going to have success as head coaches. Thinking back to 2 years ago, Brian Callahan, that coaching carousel where the Titans hired Callahan, where the Patriots hired Gerard Mayo, right? The Chargers hired Jim Harbaugh. The Commanders hired Dan Quinn. There were 7 jobs filled in that coaching carousel before the 2024 season. Off the top of your head, how many of those head coaches 2 years ago still have those jobs? Out of 7.
Maybe 2.
4. But still, 3 of the 7, almost half. So Brian Callahan,
Mayo,
Gerard Mayo, and, who's the other one? That's Raheem Morris out after being hired in that cycle. And we're talking about 10 jobs here. We're talking about franchises that have not been successful in generations, like meaningfully successful over a sustained period of time, right? Cleveland, Las Vegas. Obviously here it's been 4 to 5 years. Arizona. I cannot help but think, Robert, with the numbers that are being put out there now in the way patience is thinning in the NFL with ownership, matching up closer to what the patience level is in the college game now, to be honest. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if 4 or 5 of these jobs are open in 2 years.
Or if there's like a David Culley-esque hire.
Sure.
I don't think there's going to be a shocker like that. Maybe Monken is the David Culley-esque hire, but I do feel like he has infinitely more experience with high-level players and high-level teams than Culley did. But one of these teams, one of these final 2, maybe it's Mike LaFleur to the Cardinals, who is, I think, still the betting favorite to land that job. Maybe they're the David Culley. But it wouldn't surprise me if we're not a one and done somewhere in this coaching cycle. 10 teams is insane. And the trickle down of having to fill out 10 different team staffs as you poach off other teams. We've already noted 18 different offensive coordinators. If Clint Keys, what's his name?
Cliff Kingsbury?
Yeah, no, the other one, the Seahawks.
Clint Kubiak.
Thank you. If Clint Kubiak gets hired, there's going to be 19.
Yeah.
19 new OCs in the league.
That's crazy. We've not seen something like this in the modern era. So fascinating. We'll see what happens with Arizona and with Vegas. We'll see what happens with the rest of the Titans coaching staff, which we will give you the latest on as Robert Saleh fills it out coming up next. 12:01. Good afternoon from the Circus Sports at the Mint Kentucky Downs 104.5 The Zone studio. I'm Lucas Panzica. This afternoon, the Titans officially introduce Robert Saleh as the next head coach with a press conference that starts at 2 p.m. at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Meanwhile, Saleh's staff starting to take shape, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line coach hire reportedly is former Giants O-line coach Carmen Brasillo. Former Giants quarterbacks coach Shea Tierney set to coach in that same capacity here in Tennessee, among others. Tonight, the Nashville Predators road trip continues at the New Jersey Devils. Puck drop is at 6 p.m. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. Final hour fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. As the countdown begins to Robert Saleh's introductory press conference, 2 hours from right now, we will hear the former Jets head coach and Niners defensive coordinator speak for the first time as the leader of the Titans. As we know, Brian Daboll, the offensive coordinator, still waiting on the defensive coordinator hire, but we know Robert Saleh will call plays on that side of the ball. But the rest of the staff starting to take shape. And the Bald Brigade gets stronger and stronger by the day. Bald caps are here and ready, and we may need to throw them on for this segment. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Also on 1045 The Zone TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. So, Brian Daboll went to work with this offensive coaching staff. Quickly, defensively, the only hire that's been reported is defensive line coach Aaron Whitecotton, bald, from the Dallas Cowboys. Tony Oden, the cornerbacks coach, is being retained. He worked with Saleh in that same capacity in New York with the Jets. Otherwise, I have not seen any reported moves on the Titans' defensive coaching staff. Meanwhile, on offense, with Robert Saleh as head coach, bald, Brian Daboll as offensive coordinator, bald, Randy Jordan, running backs coach, retained, bald, Carmen Brasillo, offensive line coach, comes over from the New York Giants, bald. That's 5. Could they squeeze in any more?
Yeah, you'd think the way it was Philly, the way all these bald eagles are coming in. No, they cannot fit anymore. I feel like it would be overdoing it. Is there a bald coach that you would like them to add? Is Sean McDermott bald?
You know what? That's a great question. Off the top of my head. Why, you talking about Sean McDermott as the defensive coordinator, as the non-play calling defensive coordinator of the Titans?
Just come hang out and get a check, dude. Come hang out.
Maybe Sean McDermott's the secret candidate that Diana Rossini referred to about the Raiders and Cardinals.
He's bald as hell, dude.
Okay, I take back what I said. So, in all seriousness, Carmen Brasillo as the offensive line coach. I know Titans fans are probably wary to get extremely excited about an offensive line coach and his pedigree coming in after the Bill Callahan experience of the last, let's say, season and a half. But smarter people than me tell me that Carmen Brasillo is very, very good at this. Former offensive line coach with the Las Vegas Raiders. Before that, the New England Patriots, and most recently, the New York Giants. Orchestrated a turnaround in Las Vegas, which, Robert, you could certainly speak to this better than me, with the Raiders offensive line that saw a massive fall off after Brasillo left the building. And then the Giants offensive line that took a pretty big jump in 2025. How would you rate the job Carmen Brasillo did with the Giants offensive line from what you know about it, the parts and pieces that are there in New York?
Yeah, the morning show kind of highlighted this as well with Jermaine Illuminor, who was really a journeyman. Was a 4th-round pick by the Ravens in the 2016, somewhere in there, but was a relatively raw player. He came from the United Kingdom, didn't play a lot of football, played at Texas A&M. I believe had 2 years of starts at Texas A&M. So a raw player, still learning to play the position. He went on a journeyman career to the Dolphins, the Raiders, the Giants. Ended up catching the new offensive lineman coach's eye with the Raiders. He traveled with him to New York. Believe he had one of the better pass rush win rates or against pass rushers. But just an above, maybe below average to average offensive lineman who really came into his body. Being able to coach guys up, though, is a skill. Because how many times have you seen teams take guys, it's like, oh, this is a size guy. Like, oh, he's a really big guy, but they're going to have to refine it. If you can turn those pieces of clay into competent offensive linemen, that is a high-level skill. And as the morning show also noted, Jermaine Illuminor, a free agent. So if the Titans would like to bring him in, add a little competition, add him as their sixth offensive lineman or swing guy, he is available.
You know something else about Jermaine Illuminor?
That boy bald. Bald as hell. How would you feel about maybe Trent Dilfer coming in? I know they already have a quarterback coach. He could be the Titans' professional whiner. You know,
he's got a gig. He's back in Nashville.
Well, I know he's already here.
Coaching
so maybe they could bring him in as a fellow bald just to make the eggheads really look eggier.
Well, Shea Tierney is the quarterback's coach here, reportedly. He comes over, also from New York. That's a guy that has worked under Brian Daboll for quite some time, was an assistant at Alabama, followed Daboll to Buffalo. At one point in Buffalo, Josh Allen labeled Shea Tierney the, quote, most underpaid employee for the Buffalo Bills. And followed.
Stat.
Yeah.
Would you rather be underpaid or overrated? I would much rather be overrated.
But one is a compliment, one is not. But I hear what you're saying. He followed Daboll to New York, where he was the quarterback's coach for the last couple of years with the New York Giants. So Tierney comes in to be Cam Ward's quarterback's coach. Greg Lewis comes in from Baltimore. There's a Borgonzi connection because he worked for the Kansas City Chiefs, was part of that Kansas City staff with Tyreek Hill being drafted and turning into one of the best receivers in the NFL. And as we mentioned, Luke Stalker retained as tight ends coach for the Titans, former Titans player. For as much as we talk about this coaching staff and sort of that three-headed monster that is Robert Saleh, Brian Daboll, and special teams coordinator John Bones Fossil, all three former head coaches in some capacity. Obviously, Daboll with the Giants, Saleh with the Jets. Bones was the interim coach that took over when Jeff Fisher was let go with the LA Rams about a decade ago. But with all the experience, the play-calling experience that comes with their respective fields, 39 combined years, as Mike Herndon pointed out, compared to Brian Callahan's initial coaching staff, which had 0 years of play-calling experience among the offensive, defensive, and special teams leaders on that initial staff under Callahan. Another thing that comes when you hire that wealth of experience in those roles and along your position coaches, another thing is the connection with multiple players that are heading free agency across the NFL. And while we're mooching off of Mike Herndon's hard work, we need to get Mike on the show at some time coming up to talk about how this is all panning out with Robert Saleh and his coaching staff. Herndon has brought up some solid connections that are currently free agents to keep an eye on, as well as some Brian Daboll selections to keep an eye on. Now, we've talked a lot about some of these former 49ers and Jets players that are hitting free agency here anyway. We've talked about Breece Hall, the Jets running back that's set to be a free agent. The Spot Track market value for Breece Hall is just over $10 million. Average annual value, take that for what it's worth. We've talked about Juwan Jennings potentially coming back to Tennessee as he hits free agency, playing for San Francisco, overlapping a lot with Robert Saleh. We have not talked a lot about some of the potential Brian Daboll connections from his time in New York that could come in and make an impact. And there are some interesting names on this list that are currently free agents. Robert, could I interest you in Wan'Dale Robinson coming over as maybe a gadget piece for the Titans, the wide receiver who quietly had a 1,000-yard season in New York. Of course, Malik Neighbors went down early due to injury. That opened up a lot for Wan'Dale Robinson. But we've seen him be productive in this league with a revolving door, let's say, at the quarterback position in his NFL career.
Yeah, and that's kind of a highlighted piece of Daboll's offensive system is that he does have a number of reps available for a gadget-type wide receiver. When he was in Buffalo, it was Isaiah McKenzie, who'd never really topped out as a top gadget guy. I think he was around 200 yards every year, but did have a 5-touchdown performance in 2020. Wan'Dale Robinson, though, is probably the highlight of that. While last year he did have 1,000 yards, 700 yards before that in a mixed-up wide receiver room and a tough quarterback situation, as you've noted. But I would be interested with a certain caveat of how much is he going to need to make. Because while I do think there is a role for a player like that, in this offensive scheme. I also think that you might be better served to dip into the draft and find a guy who can do similar things for not as much money. Now, they got money to spend, and you can't take it with you. So I understand the thought of, hey, let's go grab somebody. But until this Calvin Ridley situation gets resolved of whether is he in, is he out, are they going to save money and cut him, or are they going to keep him and try to make it work? I would not want to reinvest into that position, especially after you had 2 rookie wide receivers show up the way they did. I would like to continue to give them reps and then maybe supplement the gadget reps with a rookie or a player that is lesser paid, if that makes sense.
Nebraska Matt on the FNM Bank chat says, Wan'Dale Robinson, a top 5 Scott Frost failure at Nebraska. Says he killed it at Kentucky. Love to see his success. Was Will Levis's number 1 receiver at Kentucky, Wan'Dale Robinson. Big year in his final year in Lexington with Liam Cohen calling the plays down there. We mentioned Jermaine Illuminor, who, according to PFF, has allowed the 7th best pressure rate among offensive tackles since 2024. That's a guy that I think Giants fans are campaigning for the Giants to retain. Now, that would create an interesting domino for J.C. Latham, wouldn't it? If Jermaine Illuminor were a free agent acquisition by the Titans, you'd be paying big money, by the way, to both of your tackle spots out of free agency in Dan Moore at left tackle and potentially Illuminor at right tackle. Again, this is just playing fantasy football here, essentially. And then you're talking about potentially kicking Latham inside the guard, which is where many had him projected anyway coming out of the draft, but that would be a 3rd straight year of J.C. Latham switching positions. How much would that limit his development early on in his NFL career?
I don't know. I would need to see how much Jermaine Illuminor is scheduled to make. While good offensive linemen rarely hit free agency and the average ones get paid above the salary that you would like them to do, he's coming off a 2-year deal with the Giants where he had a cap hit of $4.75 million and a cap hit of $9 million last year. If he was going to come in at $9 million, I don't necessarily think that he would be brought in to usurp the right tackle spot from J.C. Latham. I think it would be an iron sharpens iron situation, and he ends up being able to have the flexibility to play inside for you, which he did a little bit for the Ravens and other teams early in his career. Would give you a little bit of flexibility there, or to be your 6th offensive lineman if you brought him in for jumbo. I don't think that he would be the type of player that if J.C. Latham lost the right tackle competition to Jermaine Illuminor, then that is your larger issue. And maybe it's, the old saying, like you lend your buddy $20 and he doesn't give it back to you. Well, it was worth $20 for you to find out that he wasn't really your friend. Maybe it would be worth the money invested to see if J.C. Latham could beat an average right tackle like Jermaine Illuminor. And I'm not trying to denigrate the guy by saying average either. Average is very good. There is a dearth of average offensive linemen in the NFL. You need guys like that. But I would also be hesitant to go out and pay that guy $10, $11, $12 million to be a starter when you have a guy who could grow into the role.
Theoretically, on the FNM Bank chat, says, could move Latham back to left tackle. Moore was worse, talking about Dan Moore Jr. I will say about J.C. Latham, compared to Dan Moore Jr., there's one key difference between those two. Mike Borgonzi brought in Dan Moore Jr. in free agency. J.C. Latham is a Rand Carthon draft pick that was brought in with Brian Callahan as head coach, Bill Callahan as offensive line coach, who underperformed in year 2 when he was back at his more natural position on the right side. I don't know what that means for J.C. Latham this year and how it could color Titans' decision-making in free agency and in the draft, but it is something to kind of think about as we contemplate and toy with all of these possibilities. One more to leave you with here that I think is interesting. Jihad Ward, who was here this past year, spent a couple years in New York under Brian Dable, had his career high in sacks in New York with 5. And
you
then
know who the DC was?
In New York that year?
Yes.
Tell me.
Wink Martindale.
That's right. Wink Martindale worked under Brian Dable. They had an interesting ending to that relationship in New York.
Not exactly one for one the same, but similar pressure schemes that Salah shares with the blitzes. So where he played a lot of outside linebacker last year, I feel like he would play a lot more D end under Salah.
5 sacks this season for Ward, tied that career high that he had in New York back in the 2023 season. So just interesting fits for us to sit here and contemplate as free agency is yet to get underway. And, of course, the Titans' defensive staff still needs to largely fill out, but a lot of momentum on the offensive side of the ball. And it's hard not to be optimistic right now. if you're a Titans fan, with the leadership that is in place, not just with the coaching staff, but going back to the move to put Mike Borgonzi essentially in that front-facing role, in charge of the roster, in charge of personnel, taking away some of the ambiguity that came with Chad Brinker there in that director or that president of football operations role, and going from there. It's hard not to be optimistic about what the Titans have from a leadership standpoint, and we're going to hear from that leadership later today, 2 o'clock. Robert Saleh will be introduced as the next Titans head coach, and we'll get Nate Washington's thoughts on it coming up next. Coming up on 2 o'clock, Robert Saleh will speak for the first time as Titans head coach. In the meantime, his staff being filled out. We know Brian Daboll comes in as the offensive coordinator. More moves being made, and Nate Washington, Titans legend, joins us to react to all of it. Former player of Brian Daboll's at one point in New England, and looking forward to hearing from Nate, who joins us now on 104.5 The Zone. Nate, how we doing? Hope you're staying warm. It's messy around here in Nashville. Hope you are all squared where you are.
Yeah, I kind of been keeping up with Bull Lucas, and I heard you guys got hit pretty bad. And I'm surprised we here in Georgia, well, at least in the Atlanta area, didn't get us hit as bad as you guys did, being that we're actually right up the road. But, yeah, everything's cool here. The sun's out, and we'll take it. Definitely we'll take it after that weather that we were supposed to get.
Man, Mother Nature had it out for Middle Tennessee in this go-round. So I think some optimism on the way the Titans coaching staff is taking shape has at the very least provided a distraction for folks that are still dealing with the lack of power, the cold weather, and all of these things. But we did talk to you last week about the way you overlapped with Brian Daboll. We can start there. The new offensive coordinator of the Titans made official this week. Tight ends coach in New England, when you were there for a stint on the back end of your career, what was your reaction to seeing that made official earlier this week, Brian Daboll calling plays for Robert Saleh?
Well, it was excellent. I kind of hinted to the degree of wanting him in the beginning of this coaching search, for the Titans, understanding that he brought a lot to the table with what the Titans wanted to get accomplished. Daboll comes from a Belichick tree, so he understands the ability to be stern and coach, but also connect with guys on a different manner that the media and every fan may not see. I think he gets that, and I think that's what this organization needed. They needed stern direction while also having a guy that's able to connect with these young guys that are coming in the league. He does a great job of that. He's very high end on communication, not only on the schemes and the plots of the football game, but also your personal life off the field. He's very intuitive of understanding who he's dealing with. So I thought those things would be key, when you're looking for a guy to start this new regime here in Tennessee. I think as I stated, a lot of fans may have been high on Mike McDaniel, but I hate to say it, but just as a former player, I think you see a guy that's a player's guy, but too willing to be a player's guy, and I think this young team was going to need a guy that was coming in as a uncle or a father figure, sort of say, that one that was going to be able to connect with you, but also expect the greatness out of you and push you in the right direction.
He's a guy that's worked with all sorts of different profile of quarterback too, right? But where he's had the most success, Nate, in New York, of course, in Buffalo, leading Josh Allen, even at Alabama, with Jalen Hurts for the majority of that season, has been with a quarterback that has that dual threat ability. That's a pretty big part of his game, something Daboll has leaned into more recently in his career. Jackson Dart, a good example, too, in his rookie year in New York. Cam Ward, as we've seen, doesn't exactly have that at the forefront of his game. We know he can move. It's something that was kind of the Titans coaching staff this past year tried to draw out of him a little bit, but it's a unique fit from what we've seen in recent past with Daboll, now working with Cam Ward. Is there anything about Cam's skill set specifically that you're most intrigued to see how it lines up with Brian Daboll on offense?
Well, while I don't expect to see a Josh Allen or Jackson Dart type of game from Cam, I do believe that he is a playmaker in that regard. He does a great job of making plays on the run. His ability to see plays down the field and keep his eyes up is important, and I think those things benefit this offense in the way it's set up right now. And I think Daboll will do one thing I always commend about the coaching tree from Belichick is their adjustments. They're able to have their system, but also know what their players are capable of doing. And I see Daboll being able to adjust of not having a run first type of guy, but still having that ability in him. I wouldn't expect too much RPO, but I do expect there to be a splash of those things in there, being able to keep the defense off their rocker and of their expectation. I think those things will benefit this team because, as you stated, it's not Cam's first tool, but it is there and the ability for him to go out and succeed. So I think Daboll will find a way to implement those things. And all in all, I think this thing will work out. I think the first and foremost thing that Daboll is going to be good at is established in the physicalness, not only of this offense, but of his quarterback, and taking what the defense gives him and being able to put this offense in a position to be successful.
Nate Washington with us, Titans legend. Football Was My Father. You can purchase the book now on Amazon on NateWashington85.com. NFL.com as well. So we mentioned Dable, the tight ends coach in New England, while you were there, Nate. Could you kind of lay out for us a little bit why it seems to be that tight ends coach is such a stepping stone for so many guys in this league? We've seen it here, right, with guys like Arthur Smith, like Todd Downing, that have used that role to kind of catapult themselves into a play calling role in the NFL. Same went for Dable, who went from that tight ends coach role in New England after a couple of offensive coordinator stints in the NFL, and then used that to launch into Alabama, where he wins the national championship and then gets back to the highest level of calling plays in the NFL. Why is it that that position specifically seems to set up coaches for success and to take that next step calling plays on offense?
That's a great question, Lucas. And the first thing I can think of is that is the one position on the offense that knows both run game and pass game. You know, they understand the timing of the pass game. They understand releases. They understand being able to scheme or out-scheme your defense, but they also understand fronts, and they understand leverage and run schemes. So I think that's the one position coach on the offense that, outside of your offensive coordinator and maybe your quarterback's coach, that has the nuance to know everything. You know, as a receiver coach, a lot of times even in the run game, we're looking at back end things. We're not understanding defensive fronts. We're not understanding what a three tech is, a two gap is. Those things are very foreign to a lot of the receivers. But in a large view, you know, even when you're looking at the running backs, they're looking at, you know, which hole to hit, maybe protection sometime, and short yardage route schemes. You know, those things are important, but they don't understand timing the way that a receiver or a tight ends would. And outside of your lineman, there leaves you your tight ends. And I think they just get it all. You know, they understand the full scope of an offense. They understand run and pass game, what timing and leverage and angles will do for you, and not only the run game, but in the pass game. And I think it's just a benefit for all parties involved.
Nate Washington at NWash85 with us on 104.5 The Zone. While we're there, talking about Dable's stint under Belichick in New England, Nate, did you have any sort of reaction to the news this week? Bill Belichick not going to be a first ballot Pro Football Hall of Famer.
I thought it was absolutely incredibly insane. You know, when you think about this game, especially for the modern game today, as of after 2000s, when you think about, you know, the NFL, you cannot mention the NFL without mentioning Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. You know, arguably the greatest duo that we've ever seen, you know, in the National Football League. So when you look at the scope of him not being a first balloter, obviously there's some personal feelings there. And while I understand that, you know, personality is going to affect each vote, but I think, you know, you have to be able to be stern in understanding what this league stands for and what it's built on. It's built on these legends that come throughout the game and are able to accomplish these feats. The guy has 8 rings. And I think, you know, even as a guy that during that time was playing against the so-called Spygate and the Deflategate, you know, I think those things are, in all honesty, irrelevant. You know, I know that those things happen. Punishments were made, but I think when you look at the full scope of what he was able to do and accomplish in the National Football League, there's absolutely no reason why the guy shouldn't have been a first round or a first ballot Hall of Famer. Excuse me.
Yeah, certainly. It's been one of the more polarizing conversations around the Pro Football Hall of Fame that we have seen in quite some time. But, of course, the focus here is on Robert Saleh, what we're going to hear from him coming up at 2 p.m. And the first question when you saw that hire was obviously who's going to be in charge of the offense. We have that answer now, Nate, and you have these 3 figures leading the way in each phase in Brian Dable, Robert Saleh, and John Bones Fossil, of course, special teams coordinator retained from the Brian Callahan era. 3 guys that have, in some capacity, led an NFL team as a head coach. For Fossil, it was an interim role in Los Angeles when Jeff Fisher was let go, your former head coach, of course. But I did want to ask you, going back to Jeff Fisher in 2009, the staff that you were a part of as a player, with Jeff Fisher as the head coach, Mike Munchak, who was obviously going to be the eventual Titans head coach, and Coach Dave McGinnis, of course, Coach Mack, who we know well, a former head coach as well. That sort of leadership, guys that have done that or are on a path to doing that, what kind of impact can that have as opposed to what we've seen here in recent years of a coaching staff that doesn't necessarily have that proof of concept of doing it for a long time in the league?
I think it's going to mean everything for this organization. When you're talking about rebuilding the foundation of success and the expectation of identity moving forward with this organization, these three guys, as you stated, have some type of understanding from being a part of successful organizations and the way they operate. This is, while we've been very critical of front office operation, this is obviously an organization that hasn't found a guy, well, after Vrabel, that was able to understand what building success looked like, in my opinion. Callahan, not inability to ever find the identity for what this team was going to be was a huge thorn in their side. And I think these three guys understand how important that is for the foundation of your success moving forward. Each guy that they're going to draft or bring in as a free agent coming after this season is going to have an understanding of what the expectation is when you step foot in that building. Speaking for me personally, I had a huge understanding for what was the expectation going into Pittsburgh in my rookie year and what the organization was built off of. But, in all honesty, coming into Tennessee, I seen it as much as I seen a talented group of guys. I didn't understand what the identity was, the tradition was, the expectation was in Tennessee. And I think it's going to be imperative for them to build that. So to have Salah, Dable, and Fossil all have experience of being not only under successful coaching trees, but coming from successful organizations and understanding those operations is going to be imperative for these guys to build that foundation for their expectation of their players moving forward.
Nate Washington with us. Speaking of your time in Pittsburgh, Nate, we talked to you last week. You weren't necessarily in love with the idea of Mike McCarthy in Pittsburgh. It's official. He's spoken. He's done the introductory press conference, says he would love to have Aaron Rodgers back if Aaron will do it. Could be another offseason of waiting on an Aaron Rodgers decision. Where are you now as the dust has settled? Mike McCarthy going back home to coach the Steelers.
Oh man, I'm up in the air, Lucas. Man, I'm optimistic, but I'm also in a state of worry. In all honesty, as I stated last week, I think when you're looking at Mike McCarthy, you understand a guy with the ceiling. You understand what his possibilities are, even with him being able to work with the quarterbacks that he's had. I think you're also talking about some pretty good quarterbacks. When you're talking about his resume, you're not talking about a slouch for the guys that he built from the bottom up. You're talking about some pretty good talent. So even in that regard, when you look at the possibilities, I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that things go well. I'm a Steeler and a Titan for life, so I'll be dedicated to the fandom. But I'm very worried as well because, as I stated, I just feel like you see a guy with a ceiling and an understanding that this is an organization of tradition. This is I believe that he will have some understanding of that tradition, being a Pittsburgh guy. But when it comes to winning and that expectation, I don't know if he'll understand, how important it is to build this roster to get back to what it once was, and I think those things are going to be important. So I'm optimistic about it working out. I'm very hopeful that he's able to find a way to take us back to the promised land up there in Pittsburgh. But in the same sense, I'm very worried that we've already seen the ceiling and those things just won't come to fruition.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens with all these openings that have been filled. Obviously, two more that have yet to in Arizona and in Vegas. Nate, always enjoy it. Always just a little smoother, a little cleaner without Buck weighing it down. Appreciate it. Talk to you next week.
It's always smoother, Lucas, man. I always appreciate your energy, my guy. See you next week.
You too. Nate Washington with us on 104.5 The Zone. Titans and Steelers, former wide receiver. Football Was My Father. Go check it out on Amazon, NateWashington85.com as well. Robert, that opinion on Mike McCarthy just feels so universal at this point. I guess I'll just fall in line. Okay, all right, uninspiring hire. I don't know. I could see it being Mike Tomlin, rinse and repeat, but just scoring more points in the process. I don't know. To me, it didn't feel like something that would have Steelers fans ripping their hair out as much as it has been, but that's been the case.
You should be inspired by the DC hire. I think he got that right. Stealing the Raiders' defensive coordinator from last year, Patrick Graham, excuse me. Great defensive coordinator. Players love him. Max Crosby had nothing but glowing things to say about him, wanting him retained the previous year. So he's getting some hires right. Interested to see who the OC will be, knowing that Mike McCarthy is going to call the plays. I think that hinders you in getting someone who can help bring a new, fresh set of ideas in. But, a lot of good players, a lot of good teams, a lot of good stuff. You know why I think that went so smoothly, though? What is one of the characteristics of having a bald head?
It's nice and smooth.
Smooth. Smooth. And have you seen any of the pictures coming out of his arrival to
glistening.
shining, shining. It is like a snow globe, snow dome.
Who's going to ask Robert Saleh about the maintenance that is required to pull off the bald look the way he does?
I hope someone does. I need to know how often he's taken. But see, anybody I know has like one of those little, like, it kind of looks like a back massager, but you just take it over your head and buff out all the bad spots. But I feel like there's a lot more work involved than just doing that to have like the skin tight bald look. Like you can't have a little piece of, he's got the friar tuck where, the hair's growing around like a halo around his head, like a helicopter landing pad. No. There's no hair until you get to that man's eyebrows.
I do feel like there's so much more work that goes into it than we realize. On one hand, it seems like it's easy. You just wake up, you roll out of bed, and you don't have to worry about a bad hair day, ever. But I feel like there's more to that, and hopefully there's some proper journalism done at his introductory press conference in that regard, as Robert Saleh will meet with the media coming up at 2 p.m. In the meantime, we'll wrap up the show, 615-737-1045, and do some polls when we come back. Wrapping up the show, last call for phone calls, 615-737-1045. I have been informed by our hot chicken overlords that every Hattie B's location in Middle Tennessee is open except the Midtown location.
Let's go.
So you are free to go into the factory at Franklin, Lower Broadway, Melrose, or Nashville West and warm up with some Hattie B's hot chicken.
I need some of that chicken. I need some of those collard greens. I need some of that mac and cheese. I need some more of those chicken skins.
Oh, yeah.
Like those chicken skins were
in the chip bag.
Yes, they were incredible.
Great protein.
Do that. What are you doing Friday?
Going to Hattie B's with you?
Nope. That sounds like a plan.
Hit your macros with that chicken. This is a thing now, by the way.
Emphasis on my macros just involve mac and cheese. Like I'm not worrying about hitting any macros.
Those are the macros we're talking about. The amount of protein that's just being, I guess, infused into like Starbucks coffee and every Pop-Tarts. There's protein Pop-Tarts. What is that? What's going into those? What is giving that Pop-Tart 20 grams of protein?
Well, and then you have to worry about, and this is what I'm finding out from Cheyenne, you have to worry about where the source of protein is coming from.
Right.
Is it plant protein? Is it animal protein? Like, well, your body can only digest so much of this protein. You have to have the other one. I think I'll just stay fat. I think being fat and happy. Are you familiar with Patty Pimblett?
Of course, I watched the fight over the weekend. I've seen the clip you're talking about.
But he's like, so his big thing is his weight varies so much between fights. Like when he's not preparing for a fight, the dude is just pot-bellied and happy. And he got asked, like, is that tough for you to do? Like going between fights, getting super fat, then getting super ripped? And he's like, no, I would choose, I can't do his accent. I would choose to be fat and happy every day of the week. Versus being cut and ripped. And I agree with that. I think that's a solid way of thinking. Back in the medieval ages, fat guys were the hot, too hot to trot. Fat guys were the desirables. Oh, that guy must have plenty of ducks to eat. Look at that belly. Arumba. Like, come on. That's what I'm saying. Bring fat back.
A big proponent of the fat and happy lifestyle, the fappy lifestyle, if you will.
Maybe not.
No double meanings there. 615-737-1045. No question about where the protein's coming from at Hattie B's. The best protein there is. Larissa in Nashville's up next. Hey, Larissa.
Hey, you guys. Okay, I love Bert. You guys, I love this entire station. But Bert, he has no sense. And it's almost dangerous. But I will say this. Great show. This is about to get good, folks. And whatever your genre of music is, put the hype music on because this press conference is going to be lit. And you guys are the perfect station. You're bringing it. All the shows bring it all the time. And, rock the baldness. Baldness is beautiful.
Thanks for the call, Larissa.
Love every bit of it.
We love you too.
We love you too.
We love you too, Larissa. Thank you for calling in.
Big kiss, little hug.
I don't think I've ever heard those words. This press conference is about to be lit.
What?
With the light shining off Robert Saleh's beautiful bald head.
What if it's like a disco ball? Like they just put little reflective pieces? It would be lit. I'm trying to get us some hype music right now. I've been on a kick lately. If you want to stall for me.
So Robert Saleh will speak at 2:00. I sincerely hope, on a serious note, that the majority of you that can hear my voice right now have power, that you are warm, and if you do not, that it happens very soon. I am with you. We are together in this struggle, awaiting a warm house. I am very fortunate that I have friends that are saints that have taken me in our Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends Zoo House. But many people do not have that luxury. Of course, there are warming shelters across Middle Tennessee that can help people in these times of need. Was that enough for you?
Oh, yeah. So, what would a lit press conference sound like to you? I think it would be like a big teaser. Somebody's up there, master of ceremonies, kind of talking all right, I'm glad you guys have joined us today. But now, let's introduce the new head coach of the Tennessee Titans, Robert Saleh.
What about Robert Saleh?
I'm
Why does
drinking
this?
rum and Red Bull. Like, you have Jim White in there dancing. Rum and Red Bull is the unforgivable banger. Someone will play it, and then I have to drop it because I don't know if they cuss. I don't
it's
have
a
the
risky
lyrics.
play. You don't know if Robert Saleh would choose that as his walkout
No,
song.
he doesn't get to choose it. We're picking lit things. What do you think Robert Saleh would pick? These are the questions that I don't want to hear today, but if he was going to have a walkout song, it would have to be something that was lit. You're telling me rum and Red Bull wouldn't be lit for him to walk out?
Maybe that's another question that will be posed today at his press conference.
Okay. And Red Bull. I don't know what anything he says other than rum and Red Bull, but I've been listening to it for like 4 days.
So we will hear Robert Saleh speak for the first time. Not sure who else is going to speak. I don't know if we're going to hear from Amy Adams-Strunk, from Chad Brinker, Burke Nihill, Mike Borgonzi, but we will hear from Robert Saleh again at 2 p.m. So heading over there in just a few minutes, but in the meantime, let's do some polls.
Two Rivers Ford is who brings you your polls today. The most trusted Ford dealer in the North, East, West, South, Canada, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, the islands of Samoa, Japan, China, Russia. How many countries? They are the most trusted. That's all you need to know. Oh, I'm supposed to read these to you, dude.
I'm waiting.
I'm so goofy.
Do you want me to do it?
No, I didn't have them put up. I'm out of practice. I thought that you were just going to read them, and I'm an idiot.
I can read them. That's okay.
No. We're going to do this correctly. One of the polls who are brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, the most trusted dealer in everywhere, this side of the Mississippi. Who is the most impactful Titans position coach hiring? We got a lot of people saying Dable, in which Buck replied, I'm glad he's putting these polls out, which he always has. Read the poll. Jamie Bacalon says the QB coach. Eldon English said it better be tyranny. Karen Reeves saying keeping Bones.
Again, not a position coach, but I suppose I understand the confusion. Most impactful position coach hiring. I think many people look to the offensive line coach, the proof of concept that Carmen Brasillo has along the way in his career, what he's done in New England, in Vegas, and New York. But I'm very intrigued by the Shea Tierney partnership with Cam Ward as a guy that was there with Josh Allen, not necessarily as the quarterback's coach, but talk about full circle. Think about a year ago where we were trying to figure out, are the Titans going to take quarterback number 1 overall? Is it going to be Cam Ward? And to know that the Giants threw everything they could at the Titans to trade up for the number 1 overall pick, ended up getting Jackson Dart still in that first round, and a lot of the coaching staff that was part of that process and getting Jackson Dart in there and coaching Jackson Dart will ultimately end up coaching Cam Ward anyway, including quarterbacks coach Shea Tierney.
What is the better NFL head coach job, Arizona or Vegas? I vehemently disagree with the results of this poll. 20% say the Cardinals, 80% going with the Raiders. Jeremy saying, I choose the one that is not stuck with that Kyler Murray contract. Not stuck. Has one cap hit this year, $52 million, which is about the going rate for an average to above average quarterback. They got 2 years before they could cut him and save money, but a club option on the end. I think that contract is very tradable for a quarterback needy team.
You've convinced me it's not as much of a slam dunk as I thought it was, that the Raiders were the better job. Bad ownership on both ends, more of a blank slate with the Raiders roster. Maybe it boils down to how intrigued you are if you're a candidate by Fernando Mendoza with the number 1 overall pick. 2 very different jobs, certainly in the only 2 open jobs left, even as we creep up into February.
What is the biggest question Robert Saleh needs to answer at his introductory press conference? Buck alluded to this as it would be his question. John Feely agrees. Why did he fail with the Jets? And what will he be doing differently with the Titans that is going to pull them out of the gutter? Rational Drew said, what's the biggest lesson you learned with your time with the Jets? Echoing what John had. And Mike Titan, how do you plan on working with Dable during game day when it comes to having a say in play calling?
I'll be fascinated to see or to hear if it's asked about the decision to take on defensive play calling duties, which he did not do in New York. So we'll hear all of those questions answered and more in about an hour.
Odds that we get a bald question. If this is Kalashi or whatever the hell it is that the kids are betting on nowadays, odds that he has one bald question about this staff. If I put it at a 50-50, what are you taking?
I don't think it happens.
You're so wrong. You are grossly underestimating.
That's for us to bother Robert Saleh with when he ends up joining the show.
Well, you will be at the press conference today. You could how cool would that be? If you you bet on it and then forced the answer, is that legal?
Doesn't sound like it.
Sounds like we need to do it.
Let's find out. Robert Saleh speaks at 2 o'clock. In the meantime, cover 2 with Joseph Bonanno and the hitman Blaine Bishop got you covered. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.